All right. Rosie Tyler. Ms. Martinez.
Here.
Ms. Woods. Ms. Batts.
Present.
Mr. Silverkraus.
Present.
Mr. Linden. Ms. Levitt. Ms. Jordan, Dr. Jordan.
Present.
Ms. Bongiorno.
Present.
Mr. Slaughter.
Present.
Dr. Marchand.
Present.
Ms. Aden.
Present.
Ms. Hoffman. Ms. Fesermeyer.
Present.
Mr. Troth.
Present.
Ms. Levitt. And Forum President Almaraz.
Present. Madam Secretary, please indicate Rosie Tyler, Valerie Woods, and Peggy Levitt as excused. Please record any other absent members when they arrive. Before we begin, I would like to make some housekeeping announcements. First, I would like to remind everyone to please silence all your electronic devices, especially cell phones and laptops, during the meeting. For members joining online, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking, but leave your camera on. Everyone should sign the sign-in sheet at each location, even if you do not intend to testify. When testifying, please remember to turn on your microphone and clearly state your name and the entity you represent at the beginning of your testimony. Speak directly into the microphone to ensure those listening in other locations and watching online can hear your testimony. Please remember to turn the microphone off when you finish speaking. Each witness should leave a business card by the sign-in sheets or with forum staff. Meeting materials for this meeting can be accessed on the forum's webpage. Individual public copies are also available in each meeting room. Anyone who would like to receive electronic notification of and access to the forum's agendas, minutes, and final report can do so by going to the Nevada Legislature's website and following the links. I would also, before we start, like to let everyone know that you have copies from the Department of Health and Human Services as a follow-up from our last meeting. The information is a follow-up. And also, everyone should have a copy of the maps of the Senate districts. This was also requested at our last meeting. With that, last time. We would also, at this time, like to welcome Ms. Elizabeth Martinez. She was appointed, and this is her first forum meeting. Ms. Martinez, would you like to give us a little history of your background and why you wanted to be here?
My name's Miss Elizabeth Martinez. I'm formerly from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm representing District 2 from Edgar Flores. I'm here because my family's been with the legislature and inside with public, helping the public, and I'm just here to see what I could do. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Martinez, and welcome. The time for public comment is provided at the beginning and again at the conclusion of the meeting. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. We will time each speaker providing public comment to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. Speakers are encouraged to keep their comments as brief as possible. Speakers are also urged to avoid repeating comments or points made by previous speakers. Any person may also submit written comments to the forum secretary during or after today's meeting. In addition to testifying in person, members of the public may provide public comment over the phone or in writing as indicated on the agenda. We will start with those in the physical locations and then move on to anyone who has called in. Is there anyone in Las Vegas who would like to provide public comment? Please come to the table. Seeing no one, is there anyone in Carson City who would like to provide public comment at this time? Please come to the table. Seeing no one at the table, our broadcast and production services, in short, BPS, staff will interact with those phoning in for public comment. BPS, please add the first caller with public comment to the meeting.
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers to provide comment at this time.
Thank you. Seeing there are no more callers, we will move on to our first order of business, the approval of our February meeting minutes. Forum members, do you have any questions regarding the minutes? Seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the forum meeting of February 21, 2024.
I move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Thank you for the second. Mr. Troth? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. For the next order of business, we will hear from Stephen Eichroth, Administrator for the Nevada Housing Division, who will offer a presentation on affordable and low-income housing programs for senior citizens. We will take questions from the forum members at the end of the presentation. Administrator Mr. Eichroth, please feel free to begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair Almaraz, or Forum President Almaraz, and members of the forum. Thank you for letting me present this morning. Appreciate the attention that you will have on the agenda to housing issues in the state of Nevada. For the record, I'm Steve Acroth. I am the Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, and going to walk you through effectively what the division does and provide some intersections with the senior community in the state of Nevada. And as you suggested, we'll be open for questions at the end of the presentation. So let's start with an overview of the Nevada Housing Division. We are a division of the Department of Business and Industry in the state. We were established 49 years ago in 1975. And our primary function is to act as the state housing finance agency. What does that mean? That's a fancy word term for saying we're the bank for affordable housing in the state. Our mission is to improve lives and strengthen Nevada communities by expanding housing opportunities, building self-sufficiency, protecting the residents and industry of manufactured housing, and fostering economic development. We do that with a small but mighty staff of 47 full-time employees. Our agency, it's been estimated that we touch the lives of 1 in 4 Nevadans through our programs and funding. You'll hear a little bit more momentarily about some of the things we do, and I'll touch on those. But we provide homeownership opportunities, production and preservation of multifamily rentals, state and federal grant assistance and administration, oversight of manufactured housing, weatherization, and we examine low-income housing data. This slide gives a brief overview of all of our programs. We have our Home is Possible homeownership program. This is available for first-time home buyers and current homeowners. We have a couple of different programs, one specific for teachers, one specific for veterans. If you've been out of the home ownership market for 3 or more years, you will be considered a first-time home buyer through our programs. So I wanted to make that clear to everybody. And even if you own a home now and you need another home or selling as a primary residence, we can potentially help you out with some down payment assistance and things of that ilk also, depending on eligibility. Multifamily programs, I'll spend much more time talking about that here in a minute. The other thing that I really wanted to touch on this particular slide was manufactured housing. We merged with the Manufactured Housing Division in the 2017 legislative session, and we have 14 employees of the 47 dedicated to manufactured housing. And effectively, you can think of us sort of like the DMV for manufactured housing. We do titling, licensing, we have parks oversight, we do investigations on complaints and such within manufactured home communities. So I just wanted to spend a little time and let you all know that that's basically our function in that space. Multifamily programs. So the subsidized affordable housing that is developed throughout the country is done through a program called LIHTC, and that's the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. This really provides about 85 to 90% of all the affordable rental communities across the country, and that certainly is true in Nevada. And we are the tax credit allocating authority in Nevada for the 9% tax credits. We also are the tax credit authority for the 4% credits, and the 4% credits are done through the issuance of private activity bonds in Nevada. And the reason that I want to focus in on this is the main production that we can do for affordability in the state of Nevada. The 9% tax credit program creates about 600 units and preserves. Let me rephrase that. Creates and preserves approximately about 600 units of affordable housing. That's done through a competitive process and what's called a qualified allocation process, or a QAP. And I will try to, this gets really into the weeds, so it's going to be pretty high level, but understand that there's a lot to go into this. As I mentioned, we're a small staff, and most of this is done through private-public engagement. We work with private developers to develop this housing, and nonprofits. The 4% program is done through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds. Since the inception of the bond program, we've created over 26,000 units in the state of Nevada. And I'm going to go into exactly how that's structured on the next slide. So the state gets what's called private activity bond volume cap. And we get that annually, and basically it gives us the ability to issue debt for the state for various uses. And one of those uses is affordable housing. And the dollar amount associated with this debt is roughly, it varies from year to year. We're a growing state, so we continue to get more and more. but it's roughly about $360 to $380 million annually that we can issue. 50% of that goes to local jurisdictions, so Clark County, Washoe County, City of Reno, City of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson. 50% goes to the Director's Office at Business and Industry. The entities the local jurisdictions that receive it can use it for various purposes, but if they don't use it by September 1st of every year, it reverts back to the Director of Business and Industry. And that's what creates the 4% tax credit program, are the availability of private activity bonds, because when we issue them, that issues an accompanying tax credit. And really, that's the only place where you can use 4% bond volume cap and receive tax credits. There are other purposes, sewage, waste disposal, economic development, but they don't receive the tax credits. They'll just get the lower financing created by the volume cap. So that's one program. That creates the bulk of our units in the state of Nevada. The 9% program, again, is an allocation, but that is based on tax credit authority that the state receives from the Internal Revenue Service. And when you receive that tax credit authority, it's good for, when we issue it, it's good for a tax credit for 10 years. And it really brings in equity to the developments, which allow them to lower the rates that are charged via rental. But please understand that all of these programs are developed for 60% area median income residents and lower. That's potentially a problem within the senior community. We have seen some seniors who, through retirement, Social Security, actually rise above that 60% level, and unfortunately this tool is not available to them, with one exception, and that is that the IRS created what's called income averaging. And they did this a few years back, but they didn't do it very well, and it took some regulations to get through this. And now it's been cleaned up a little bit. And what income averaging does is it allows the property, if they choose to, and it's really complex, but if they choose to, they can go up to 80% area median income for residents. But if you go up to 80% on one hand, you have to go down to 40% on the other, so that that net balance is right at 60% area median income. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for compliance. It's a challenge for process. And we've really only had, I think, one property, and I don't recall if it was a senior property or not off the top of my head, that really has been able to advance this. So that's one of the issues that we see. We are limited on income limits within that program. You've probably heard a lot about financing gaps. I'm going to spend just a short period of time here. When we create affordable housing, it takes a lasagna-style layer of financing. And so just going really, really quickly through this, the green bars here, this is what's created through the tax-exempt revenue. So the bonding authority in this particular $66 million project, $31 million is from that private activity bond authority I mentioned. That tripped the $23 million in tax credit equity, which is the lighter green bar. Deferred developer fee is basically profit that's put into the development, cash from operations and home funds, and we'll talk about home funds in a little bit. But basically what you'll see here is out of $66 million, we still, even through all these levels of financing, we don't achieve the whole net of $66 million to develop the property. That's the financing gap. And we're seeing that grow and grow over time, and it's a challenge to overcome in the current economic environment with higher interest rates, higher labor, supply chain issues, land increases, all the stuff that doesn't necessarily bode well for the development of affordable housing. So we've created a program, and we work very, very diligently in trying to fill that gap, because if that gap continues to exist, the property does not get built, or it needs to be compromised in some way. So keep in mind, there's always a gap in some of this financing that we do. This slide, I just wanted to talk about real quick. This is the timeline. This will be in your presentation. And this really starts the division side of things. So the first flag there is the application when they come to apply for tax credits or bond cap authority through us. And it takes roughly 27 months for projects to go, once they've come to the division, to actually get built and occupied. And this is for new construction projects. So basically, we're looking at anywhere from a year and a half, that's really, really quick, to 2.5 years to get these projects to fruition in most cases. And the other thing that I want to mention on this particular slide, that's when the division obtains the application. So there's a whole lot of work that's done by the development community prior to this in acquiring the land, securing those other forms of financing that I mentioned in that lasagna stack of financing. So a lot of these projects are literally years and years and years in the making, which is not great when you're trying to solve an affordable housing situation that's immediate. Some of the other programs I'll touch on real quick. These are the HUD programs and a state program administered by the division. Federal home funds come in. We get those about $3 million annually, which are designed to develop, build, and finance and support low-income housing. The State Affordable Housing Trust Fund, this is created through the real estate property transfer tax in Nevada, and it's the match for the home funds. It's roughly about 8 to 9 million annually. It really depends on real estate sales. So up until this year, we were pretty fortunate. We've had increased real estate sales, and that tax monies have come to the division to support this program. But with the higher interest rates and the tail off in real estate sales, we haven't received as much as we have in the 2 previous years. The National Housing Trust Fund, again, historically about $3 million annually. This is designed to increase and preserve the supply of affordable housing, primarily for extremely low-income individuals, which is below 30% area median income. The Emergency Solutions Grant, that's $400,000 annually. It's a program that focuses on the prevention of homelessness. So if you kind of add all these up, in blue skies, we're getting about 15 to 20 million annually in federal support through these programs to create affordable housing. Now, you just saw that one development was $66 million. So this is not a whole lot of funding when you go back to trying to develop affordable housing and spread this throughout the state. 2 other programs I want to focus on that are available. The first is the lot rent subsidy. This is with manufactured housing. If you are a resident of manufactured housing and you are income qualified, you can get up to $150 a month subsidy to keep you in your home if you are living in a park. The Weatherization Assistance Program reduces the energy burden for families. We work with 4 subgrantees throughout the state who can provide this service. So if you're looking to increase your energy efficiency, if you have insulation that needs to be replaced, they'll actually come in. The first thing that weatherization inspector will do, an energy auditor, is to actually conduct an audit and will determine what's going to be the best way of reducing that energy burden on your home. In most cases, it's insulation repair, but it could be furnace repair, things of that ilk. So we work with, again, nonprofits and housing authorities and folks in this space to provide those services. Want to spend a little bit of time here. This is our pandemic and post-pandemic funding. Effectively, between rental assistance that went through the division, homeowner assistance that currently exists through the division, some housing stability, eviction diversion, and other funding that has been provided to the division. In the past 4 years, since the onset of the pandemic, we've received $1 billion in housing assistance. And we work, again, with private entities, nonprofits, to work to get this funding out the door. And the one thing I really want to focus in on, we're a conduit agency, so we haven't increased our staff. We've been 47 since 2020. And we really, really, really rely on the public partnerships and private partnerships that we develop with the local jurisdictions, with development community, with the nonprofits that operate in this space to get this funding out the door. Senior housing examples. I'll spend a little time on this slide. I mentioned that the affordable housing in the 4% program is supported by bonding authority, that we get roughly 300, back in 2018 was probably more like 300, now it's about 360, 370. But $1.2 billion in bond authority has been provided to multifamily construction since 2018. So that volume cap that I've mentioned that the state has received, we've received the lion's share of it. The administrations, both past and present, really have been supportive of developing affordable housing in the state. We've created 8,600 units of multifamily rental properties, in multifamily rental properties in that time. 49% of those are provided for seniors. Now, when I mention that, actually 8,600 units are available to seniors. Seniors can live in family properties, but 49% are specific to senior properties. So I want to make sure that this group understands that. A senior can live in any of the properties that we develop, but there are specifics for seniors where family members other than caregivers and that like cannot reside. So 4,200 units of senior housing created or preserved. We've also, over 2,500 units in that same time have been created through the 9% program. 49% of that is for seniors. And again, seniors can live in the other 51%. And so that's 1,250 units of senior housing created or preserved. We are projecting 3,000 plus units of affordable housing to be created or preserved through the Home Means Nevada initiative. Going back to the previous slide where I mentioned that $1 billion in funding has come in through the division, half of that, $500 million, is effectively done through the Home Means Nevada initiative through the use of American Rescue Plan, state and local fiscal recovery funds. Those projects are coming to fruition. They're getting off the ground. We have to obligate all the funding by December of this year, and the funding has to be expended by December of 2026. And again, going back to that timeline, one reason I wanted to show that was because this funding is just now being obligated. Developments are just beginning to get started, and unfortunately, it will probably be a year or two before we're able to actually have units that residents can reside in. But we anticipate out of those 3,000 plus units, 1,200 plus will be specific to senior affordable housing. And also I wanted to highlight this in part of that program. $16 million is projected to be spent on rehabilitation for existing homeowners. The bulk of that has been provided to agencies that really are trying to help seniors age in place and do complement our weatherization efficiencies and our weatherizations programs that typically will not receive that level of funding necessary to completely rehabilitate the house. Housing legislation that was just passed in the last legislative session We have roughly about 8 to 9 bills that were passed specific to housing that, for the most part, the division is either involved in or is working with the entities that receive the benefits of this housing. Where do you find housing? nvhousingsearch.org. If you receive tax credits from the division, if we have assisted any development in any way through funding, the properties are required to list on nvhousingsearch.org. This is, you can access it off the division's webpage. You can access it directly. It lists all the tax credit properties and affordable properties that we have. I do want to emphasize these are for eligible seniors. We know there's not enough. We know that when you probably go there, that if you call these places or contact them, you may be denied initially, but keep trying because there are vacancies that come through. We are going to have a number of properties come to fruition, as I mentioned, in the next year, year and a half. So I would emphasize to this group that if you have folks that you know in need of housing, this is the place to go. If, for whatever reason, there are impediments to working on the website, things of that ilk, they do have I'll call it an 800 number, I think it's an 888 number. Regardless, they do have a phone number that can be called that's very, very easy and is manned 7 days a week, I believe. Could be 5 days a week, sorry. I may be speaking out of turn on that. But very easy for seniors to access. And with that, that wraps up my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
We really appreciate your presentation, Administrator Aycroft. Before I take questions, I would like to remind everyone that you may have one question and one follow-up. We will move on to the next forum member that has a question, and we can come back to you if there is still time. Are there any questions from the forum members?
I have a question.
Dr. Jordan?
Yes, good morning, and thank you so much for being here this morning. I want to address a question that deals with low-income housing, the tax credit. You said that you had 49.6% for senior properties. How much of that is public and how much of that is private?
Steve Aycroft, for the record. Everything that's done through the tax credit program is a private public partnership. So it is not Section 8, quote-unquote, housing. I think that's what you're referring to as public housing. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. We do work with the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. We do work with the Nevada Rural Housing Authority and with the Reno Housing Authority. Those are the three public housing authorities in the state of Nevada. In fact, they have received an awful lot of the Home Means Nevada dollars. We have 4% projects that they've done and certainly 9% projects. And so we're engaged in there. But public housing is not part of what the division does. So what we've focused in on here is specifically tax credits that are done with public housing authorities, nonprofits, and for-profit developers.
Thank you very much. I was just looking at your model, and I wanted some clarification on that, because it does say public and private, but if most of it's private, then it's not really addressing public.
Steve Aycroft, for the record, it's available to everybody, so from that standpoint, it's available to public, but it's not what is traditionally looked at as quote-unquote public housing.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Troth?
Roger Troth from Senate District 18. On slide 11, when you talk about the 8,600 units that are created, who actually winds up owning those rental units? Do you have just an idea?
Steve Acroft for the record. So to go back to sort of what I just answered, it's the entity that has applied for the tax credit through the applications or through the bond authority. So again, it can be a public housing authority, it can be a private enterprise, it can be a nonprofit. That's basically the ownership. I will say a couple of things, if I can add to it. Once we issue those tax credits to the entity, they have to keep the affordability restrictions for 30 years. So when we provide this, the property will be affordable for 30 years. When we preserve it, it kicks that 30-year clock again. So if we have a property that might be 10 or 15 years, well, not 10, but 15 to 20-year-old, come back for rehabilitation, then that will restart the clock and it will be affordable for, again, for 30 years.
Thank you. And one follow-up. You mentioned a little bit later on that same kind of slide that after 20, you're getting American Rescue Plan money now that needs to be expended here in the next year or so, and that it expires after 2026. Is there thoughts or with anything after 2026 that needs to be financed or continued? What's the thought process on some of that?
Thanks for the question. Steve Acroft, again, Administrator for the Nevada Housing Division. You're 100% correct, and that's why I wanted to show that financing gap slide, if you remember on that capital stack, because an awful lot of the American Rescue Plan funding that we have received has gone to filling in that, that financing gap. And so it's actually, we're one of the states where we're getting a lot done because of the investment of the state and local fiscal recovery funds. So what happens post 2026? The division currently is still working on programs. We have what's called our GAP program, Grow Affordable Housing Program. We have state tax credits available to the division that we are working through, and we keep looking for other examples. The hope is by 2026, as we see this growing gap, that will reduce with the lowering of interest rates and things of that ilk, and maybe it won't be quite as severe, but it's a space that we operated in pre-pandemic and pre-pandemic assistance, and a space that we'll come back to. But we are always going back to that home funding and things of that ilk, always trying to find other avenues to assist in closing that financing gap.
Thank you.
Any other
Joanne
questions?
Bongiorno? Yes, Joanne Bongiorno, District 10.
Go ahead, Joanne.
I'm not sure you hear me. I have a question. Are traditional lenders, are they able, in essence, to fund if someone wants to qualify for this type of a loan, or is able to?
Steve Acroft, just for clarity, are you when you talk about traditional lenders qualifying for a loan, is that in the multifamily space or the home ownership space or both?
Both.
Okay. Thank you, Steve
But
Acroft.
are you speaking of, okay, are we speaking of single-family dwellings, or are we speaking of multi-dwellings?
I'll answer for both. So our homeownership programs are actually done through a network of traditional lenders, if you will. So anybody that you go to a lending institution, They do sign up, and I don't have the total numbers of lenders who participate in our homeownership programs, but it's substantial. And we can provide, in some cases, 3 to 5% for down payment assistance. And so that's worked with a private-public partnership where the public entity that's providing this ability and the private sector and those mortgage lenders can use our program, and I would say most do. They do have to be based in the state of Nevada, have a location in Nevada. So they don't have to be, they can be national, but they do need to be have a Nevada physical office, which lends to some of the ones that just exist on the internet as not being eligible for our program. As far as the tax credit development program, we're just the conduit lender. We don't actually lend directly to the financial institution. I will tell you that there are, it's a very limited pool of folks who operate in this space because it's incredibly complex. But what we typically see is larger institutions like a Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Chase. They're the folks that typically operate in this space, and they do that on a national basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slaughter, you had a question?
Yes, I did. Trying to get up to speed and trying to understand what this is going, this is happening, is that I'm a veteran, and I was wondering, what does this do for veterans, senior veterans that are homeless?
Steve Acroft, for the record. I'm going to take that sort of in two parts. Senior veterans, first of all, in the homeownership program, we have a special program for veterans. Veterans don't need down payment assistance when they get a VA loan. It's 100%, so we can actually, if market conditions allow, provide for a lower interest loan to those veterans. Number two, in the multifamily space, when we develop new housing, we insist on a veteran's preference. So a veteran will potentially move up to the front of the line. We can't really do that on the rehabilitated properties because they're already occupied, but we do ask for a veteran's preference on any of our new developments. Third, you'll probably hear more about veterans homelessness from presenters behind me in their next agenda. But if you go back to here, I got slide 8, when we talked about the ESG grants, that's really all the division receives for the prevention of homelessness, and it's $400,000 annually, roughly. And so, that gets dispersed to local agencies, COCs, community continuums of care, rather. And it's not a whole lot of funding for homeless, and it's not specific to veteran homeless, although a lot of the agencies that we work with certainly provide assistance to veteran homelessness, to veterans who are homeless. But, we can use some of our state trust funds, we can use some of our home funds. The Housing Trust Fund is primarily designed for lower income, extremely low income, so that's 30% and below. So we do see some intersection there, but it's not nearly enough. And again, I'll defer to the folks who will be presenting after me. They can talk to you a little more about that. I will say, and sorry, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but our first project that I envision coming to fruition and being occupied using the Home Means Nevada initiative dollars will be Dick Scott Manor up in Reno. And that will house 12 veterans. And I'm hoping that will open up here probably this summer based on where I see the construction going.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have a question? Anyone in Carson? No. Thank you, Mr. Acroft. I do have a question about the lot rent subsidy program. You said it's $150 maximum. My district has several manufactured home parks. Is that a one-time or is it monthly? Many of the lot rents in my district are now over $600, $700 a month. My follow-up to that is there anything in the works that might increase that $150 maximum?
Thank you for the question. It is the homeowner can apply on an annual basis and reapply. If they qualify, then they are entitled to $150 or up to $150 per month for that year. Now, there was some legislation passed in 2023 that modified the lot rent subsidy program. It previously had been specifically indexed to the federal poverty level. And what we were finding is that really was too low, and we weren't getting enough assistance out there. So to answer your question, that legislation actually increased it up to 30% area median income, which in most cases is higher than the federal poverty level. So what we're doing is, because that has only been in effect basically since July of last year, we're evaluating how that program is being increased, if it's being increased, and exactly what that will look like. And then the possibility, depending on the funding and the demand on the program, we will look at increasing that amount. Because it's been $150 for a long time. $150 is not what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So we do want to take a look at that, but we need to make sure that the funding is equivalent to the outgoing, and so we're establishing that balance. And since we just changed the eligibility requirements, we want to make sure that those that are receiving $150 continue to receive $150, because if we get more folks and there's not enough funding in there, then we're going to have to reduce everybody's allocation across. So we're approaching that a little more cautiously, just to make sure we don't harm those who are already receiving those benefits.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair. This is Lucille Aiden, Senate District 13. And I have a
Go
question.
ahead, Lucy.
Yes, I have a question about the rental assistance program. How does that work, and how does one qualify for that?
Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. When you talk about rental assistance program, are you talking about what, I'm a little confused because there's a couple of different answers. Is it specific to rental assistance that was provided, via pandemic funding or through other agencies, or is it property-based, I guess is the way I'm phrasing it?
Property-based, yes.
Property-based. So effectively, what you would have to do is to go to, I would recommend this process. Go through NevadaHousingSearch.org, find a property that's close nearby, go and talk to their property managers, see if you're going to be eligible for the property, and effectively that's how it's going to have to be done on that particular instance.
Okay.
When it comes to, just for the committee's benefit, when it comes to rental assistance programs that are administered, because there is some of that in Clark County, there is some of that in Sparks, there is some of that in Reno, you would deal with either the City of Reno, City of Sparks, or the Reno Housing Authority in the north, or Clark County Social Services in the south.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I do have another question. Which of your programs, and I'm thinking it might be Home Means Nevada, are funded by our state government or that you receive funds from our state budget?
Thank you for the question. The first thing that I'll mention, our traditional programs are State Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's listed on page 8. That's done through the collection of the real estate property tax. And that is the federal required match for the home funds. That is a state program. The lot rent subsidy program is a state program. Going to the pandemic and post-pandemic funding, it's identified the $500 million was state appropriated dollars. They were federal dollars, but they could be used for a litany of services. The housing division, literally with that $500 million investment, received about 20% of the total of the ARPA SLFRF funds. And that, I can tell you, it's not the largest amount that any one state has received from a dollar, but as a per capita, I believe it is the largest out of all the states in the country to receive that much funding. The legislature also appropriated $30 million in state and local fiscal recovery funds for Clark County for eviction, diversion, and rental assistance. $11 million for a housing, part of a development in Clark County. The one thing that I'll highlight, and this is on page 10, is the $32.2 million for the enactment of AB 310, which is the Nevada Supportive Housing Fund that passed in the last session. And while it's not specific to seniors, certainly there will be senior interaction. That is the first time in my recollection that the Housing Division ever received state general funds, and I think that's the crux of your question. And so we are currently promulgating regs to activate that fund, and that fund is not to build. I want to be very clear on this. This is a program to support, in the supportive housing space, the population that is going to reside there. So it's not necessarily to build more housing, it's to provide the services, to provide supportive services for the residents who are in that building.
Thank you. And I have just one more question. SB 450, which was passed for the Windsor Park, what is the timeline for spending that to fixing the Windsor Park area?
So the funding for SB 450 came from two sources. It was $37 million, $25 million in ARPA SLFRF funds. So those have to be obligated by 24 and spent by 26, so same as the Home Means Nevada initiative. The other funding expires in 2025, but post the next session. So, and that was $12 million in funding. And so that can be re-upped in the next session. We've already had discussions with the governor's finance office to make sure that can happen because that's the first timeline we will hit. But currently, status of that, we are working on contracting with a developer to get that project going, and then also we'll have meetings later this month with the city of North Las Vegas to provide the first steps in that process.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Mary Fesenmeyer from District 17. I'm from a very rural
Go ahead,
district.
Mary.
I'm sorry. I'm from a very rural district, Lyon County, Mineral County, Churchill. et cetera, and I'm wondering if there are any of these facilities available in my district. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Steve Acroft, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. For the record, there are. I'll phrase it this way. When we get back to talking about how the 9% and 4% projects are done, it's probably a little dirty word these days, but it really is investor-driven, right? The folks that get the benefit of the tax credits, they want to make sure that their investments are safe. That becomes a little more difficult in rural communities that are more potentially subject to the ebb and flow of the rural economies, if you will. Bond projects, which are larger, typically do not work in those areas. It's the 9% program that supports those entities. And for the most part, we work in the rehabilitation of those properties. Now, the good news is we actually have a bond project that will be coming before the Board of Finance here shortly for the rehabilitation of properties in Lovelock and Fallon. And it's unique because it's scattered site. Most of the developments are kind of, here's the property, here's the parcel. This is, I think it's 8 different parcels, 3 different properties. So it's a little complex, so it's going to be a little challenging to do, but it will be, to my knowledge, in what I would consider pure rural areas, the second bond deal. We did one in Tonopah a few years back, and so this will be the second bond deal, but most of those go through the 9% program.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Joanne Bongiorno, District 10.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Do you have any developments presently here in Las Vegas, or some that may come to fruition very shortly?
Steve Acroft, for the record, we do. We have lots and lots of bond projects that I'm trying to think out loud here. We'll have grand openings. We do an awful lot of development in Las Vegas. We will have 2 coming to the Board of Finance in April, I believe. And a number of Home Means Nevada projects. One that just broke ground is Buffalo and Cactus. That's an Ovation project. We work with, in Southern Nevada specifically, a lot with Nevada Hand, a lot with Ovation, and Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority is certainly starting to kick up their investment in developing and preserving their affordable housing. So we've got a lot going on currently in Las Vegas, yes.
Excuse me, but are there any models presently?
Steve Acroft, for the record, that are available or that are coming up to construction?
That are available.
We have, I think the best way I can answer that is to go to nvhousingsearch.org. You can type in Las Vegas, Henderson, Clark County, something along those ilk, and you'll see current available apartments in the Vegas Valley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no more questions, thank you, Administrator Acroft, for your presentation. We appreciate your time, and we have learned a lot from you this morning. Thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item. The Nevada Interagency Council on Homelessness to Housing. We will hear a presentation on programs addressing affordable housing and supportive services provided to unhoused senior citizens in our state. We will first hear from Ms. Cooper, Manager of Homelessness to Housing with the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, Department of Health and Human Services, and Miss Fuller Howler, hope I say that right, owner and CEO of Winged Wolf Innovations. They will begin with information about the Nevada Interagency Council on Homelessness to Housing, and we will take questions from members at the end of the presentation. Ms. Cooper and Ms. Fuller Hallauer, feel free to begin your presentation.
There we go. Good morning, President Alvarez, forum members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this morning. I'm not sure if this slide is working correctly.
Please state your name.
Michelle
for the
Fuller.
record.
I'm Michelle. Sorry about that. I'm Michelle Fuller Hallauer for the record. I am not Niani Cooper. She's much prettier than I am, so you're stuck with me this morning. Niani is unable to be here this morning, so thank you. So as I get started, I am, as I stated, I'm Michelle Fuller Hallauer, and I am the chair for the Technical Assistance Committee for the Interagency Council on Homelessness to Housing. So I will be presenting to you on behalf of the Interagency Council. And as we get started, I would just like to take a moment and ask you, do you know of anyone who's 55 or older? Well, hold on a minute. Do you know anybody that you love or that's close to you that's 55 or older, like grandparent, parent, someone you love? Of course you do. You're here sitting here because of that, right? I want you to think about somebody very, very close to you that really touches your heart. One particular person that really you care about. And I want you to write that person's name down. Just take a moment and write that person's name down, because it's going to be important as I go through my presentation. So write their name down, and when I get about halfway through, we're going to come back to that, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the Interagency Council. The Interagency Council itself was established in 2019 to coordinate and focus the state's efforts on effectively addressing homelessness. It was established under a bill to coordinate and for the opportunity for us to integrate our approach on addressing homelessness and promote interagency cooperation. The purpose of the council really is to integrate our approach regarding the issues of homelessness and for us to increase awareness around homeless issues and the issues around the state and local governments and our local organizations in providing services for folks that are experiencing homelessness. The council members, as you can see, and I'm not going to list all the names, but as you can see, these are decision makers from our key departments within the state that sit on our council. We have a technical assistance committee as part of the council, and the technical assistance committee is charged with establishing and maintaining and implementing the state strategic plan to end homelessness. The council meets on a monthly basis. In 20 and 21, they revised the initial strategic plan that was established in 2015 under the previous Interagency Council, and they are responsible for updating and revising the strategic plan. They're currently developing an action plan that will be a companion to the strategic plan. And we have 8 strategic issues as part of the strategic plan. Those strategic issues are housing, homeless prevention and intervention, wraparound services, education and workforce development, coordination of primary and behavioral health, policies, coordination of data and resources, and long-term planning. As you can see here, there's a list of the technical assistance subcommittee members, and we have representation from across the state who sit on that subcommittee. The strategic plan overview. The strategic plan really is focused on the complex public health concerns, and we have a lens on the social determinants of health, because homelessness is a complex issue, and we recognize that no one solution will solve the issue around homelessness. So we know that we need to come up with various solutions in order to address the issue. We also recognize that the state of Nevada, although we try to work collaboratively across the state, that all the areas of the state are very diverse. We have urban areas, both large metropolitan area here in the south, we have smaller urban areas in the north, and then we have rural and frontier areas. So we recognize that there are differences across the state that need to be collated and collaborated, but yet dealt with uniquely. So the strategic plan serves dual roles for dynamic management and communication across the state, and for assisting with addressing those homeless issues. And we make sure that we undergo comprehensive reviews so that we can implement the strategies that are within the state plan. The Department of Health and Human Services, through the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, developed the Homeless to Housing Unit, or the H2H unit, to help with the administrative support for the council. And they were established out of the AB 174, and they helped the NRS Code 232-498 help to define the council and the creation. They help us as the council and our subcommittees to ensure that we follow the law, right? That we follow open meeting law, that we follow Robert's Rules of Order, that we have a DAG present, a district attorney present at all of the meetings, and the chief administrator approves all of our actions. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the name that you wrote down in the beginning of my presentation. Now, I'm going to lay the groundwork for my esteemed colleagues for the rest of my presentation and the next 3 presentations that you're going to hear. I'm going to be presenting a lot of data, and I know that data can be boring. And so I know it can cause many of us to have our eyes glaze over. So when you start to feel your mind wandering, I want you to really think about the person that you wrote down. Right? And I want you to think about, we're not just talking about numbers, we're talking about people. And I want this to help you connect the brain, right, or the numbers to the heart, to the person, to the people. Okay? So that's the reason I wanted you to write a name down so that we can help connect these numbers with people. So as folks are getting older, especially our people that are experiencing homelessness, we know that there's an upward trend in the proportion of older people among our homeless population. They're not old enough necessarily to, when I say older population, let me clarify, I'm talking folks between 50 and 64, right? And then older. Right. So they may not be old enough to qualify for Medicare, but due to poor nutritional and living conditions, they may resemble somebody that's much older. When you are experiencing homelessness, you age much quicker than somebody who's housed. Yet they may not be eligible, or they become eligible for services at different rates. So somebody might not be eligible for housing, or senior housing, until they're 62, or they're not eligible for Medicaid until they're 65, or they're not eligible for Social Security until you're 65. So depending on how old you are, depends on what services you're eligible for. Then you have other challenges as you age and you're experiencing homelessness, because you often may have similar healthcare issues as a housed person who is 10 to 20 years younger than you are. As I said, you tend to age much quicker as you are if you are unhoused. And you appear much old, not only much older, but much sicker than your housed counterparts. So if you're on a street and you're 50 years old, you are the new 75, right? So you also have higher rates of geriatric syndromes if you are unhoused, and higher rates of cognitive impairment compared to younger folks, whether you're housed or unhoused. So those are some things that we need to consider when we're talking about folks that are experiencing homelessness. And as you start getting older and have experienced homelessness or are experiencing homelessness. So this chart here, I just want to make sure that you understand, again, that those experiencing homelessness may be eligible for Medicaid or Medicare to help address their illnesses, but they may not know how to apply for those benefits. They don't necessarily have access to their Medicare providers, or they don't necessarily trust institutions. They also may not acknowledge their health issues. A lot of clients don't want to necessarily address or may not be ready to address any of their medical or mental health challenges, even if they're able to or ready to admit it. So just wanted to bring this to your attention. Let's talk a little bit about a living income gap. A living income gap is defined as sufficient income. Let's think about this. Living income is defined as a sufficient income to afford a standard of living for all household members, including a nutritious diet, clean water, decent housing, education, healthcare, and other essential needs, plus a little extra for emergency and savings once all your costs are covered. Well, with that definition, how many of us are really actually have a living wage? What about the person that's on your paper? Or what about our other seniors, right? We have a serious shortage of low-income housing, not only in the U.S., but in Nevada, and that exacerbates our living income gap, right? Householders who are in the 50s and or mid-60s are especially at risk of insufficient resources to manage the rising health care and their household costs. There is a lack of affordable housing. According to the GAP, which is put out by the National Low Income Housing Coalition every year, and this year nationally, there are 34 available affordable units nationally for extremely low income households per 100 extremely low income households. That's a national. In Nevada, there are 14 available units for extremely low-income households. In southern Nevada, there's 13. We rank number 1, and not in a good way. We have the lowest availability of affordable units for extremely low income in our state. Nevada has 91,243 extremely low-income household renters. And as you can see from this chart, 31% of them are seniors. So let's talk about generally people experiencing homelessness in Nevada. This chart shows you the total point in time count. So every year in January, the end of January, all three continuums of care, which are geographic areas around the state, we have three continuum of care in the community, or in our state. We have the Northern Nevada Continuum of Care, which is the Washoe-Reno-Sparks Continuum of Care. That's Northern Nevada Continuum of Care. The Southern Nevada Continuum of Care is the geographic area of Clark, the boundaries of the county of Clark and all jurisdictions therein. And then we have the balance of state, or the rural Nevada Continuum of Care. That is the rest of the state. This chart shows the total point in time count for the continuums of care in January of 2023, with a breakout for our seniors. And we broke out the seniors by 55 to 64, and then 65 and older, because I think it's important for us to delineate those differences, because our seniors that are 65 and older are eligible for different benefits or different services than those that are 55 to 64. So I think it's important for us to delineate the differences. And I think it's important for you to understand as well that there's, for our 55 to 64, the total through the whole state, almost 20% of our people experiencing homelessness are seniors between 55 to 64. And those that are over 65, it's almost 13% of our homeless, overall folks experiencing homelessness. And the colors delineate which COC they are in. The data that I'm showing you now is out of our homeless management information system or our community management information system. We use the terms interchangeably. It's a data system that is required by HUD, which is our main funder for homeless services, and it's required to our continuums of care. So that's where our data for our homeless services is captured. So I pulled this data for a full year on everybody that goes to our homeless service systems or homeless service providers asking for services, right? And then I pulled the data for folks that are 59 and above, right? And so this shows you folks by age and by gender. And as you can see, there's a pretty even breakout by folks that are male and female. And it's broke out, as I said, by age. You have the numbers. And for folks, how old they are. And we even have somebody who's, a couple folks that are 97, 98 that are experiencing homelessness in our homeless services system across the state. This is for our whole state. This is the same data set for veterans. Now, the majority of folks identified that they were not veterans, but we do have 670 that did identify that they were veterans. So we're working with our local VA throughout the state. We have 4 VA captioning areas throughout the state. So we're working with them to make sure that our veterans, but not all of our folks that have been registered as a veteran are eligible for veteran services. So those folks need to get services through our homeless services system and are not eligible for general veteran services. This is the same data set for household composition. I think it's important for you to identify here, or to pay attention here, that we did include here households with children because there are seniors, folks that are 59 and older, that are in households that have children. But the majority, almost 97%, are households without children. Now, there are maybe many reasons why there are children in the household. It may be that they are in an extended family, or they may be grandparents that have custody of their grandchildren. I don't know the answers to those questions, but it may be worth delving into further. Our data set does not give us that information, but that is something for us to consider. And this slide here tells us the breakout of our seniors per continuum of care. So it gives you the same data in two different ways. One is per age, and the colors delineate which continuum, and the bar graph just gives that to you per continuum. But the breakout really is Southern Nevada has the majority, which is not surprising because they have the majority of folks that are experiencing homelessness at 83.4% of our seniors. Rural Nevada has 9.74% of our seniors, and the Northern Nevada has 6.86% of seniors experiencing homelessness. So with this, as we move into our next presentations, I just want you to keep in mind the person that you wrote on your sheet. As you listen to my colleagues, that when we are talking about the services that we have throughout our continuums and the data, that we're talking about people. And the people that we love are the people that we want to serve, that we're serving, and the people that we love could be in a situation where they're experiencing homelessness, and we want to make sure that all folks could have a home and a safe place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from the forum? Mr. Slaughter, sorry.
Frank Slaughter from District 11. I'd like to congratulate you on your presentation. I'm a graph guy, and it really made a lot of sense, but I also like the fact that you put it in a personal sense of people that we know. It's just not a statistic. Even though the statistics made it more interesting or brought it home to us easier to understand, but the fact that it was an individual thing as well. But thank you very much for your presentation. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jordan?
Good morning, Marilyn Jordan, District 9. I am extremely confused by the presentation of a strategic plan that's been going on since 2014 that hasn't gotten any place until 2022. Being someone who writes strategic plans all the time, I'm concerned. The strategic plan that you presented, and I like to look at, is actually what an organization looks at for a roadmap to the future. It aligns your mission, your vision, and your goals in the organization. The goals are broad statements that you should lead to objectives. And in this case, goals are what you want to have happen. Objections are your action plan. If you're just getting to an action plan now, what have you been doing for the last 6 years that you're evaluating as a plan? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Michelle Fuller-Hellauer for the record. As I stated before, I am the chair of the Technical Assistance Committee that was developed under the Interagency Council that was developed in 2020. So we've been in effect, for a few years, and so I can only speak to where we are today. So we have a strategic plan, and we have been asked to put forward an action plan that is to implement that strategic plan. So that's where the Technical Assistance Committee is actively working on ensuring that the the plan is actionable and able to be implemented. So at this point, we are ensuring that we are working very closely with the 3 continuums of care to ensure that the communities and the people that they serve have voice in the strategic plan, and that the action plans are actionable on the ground and in the communities, so that it can have impact.
As a follow-up to my question, because you didn't answer my question, you had a strategic plan from 2014 to 2020. What did you evaluate from that? Because a strategic plan is usually something that an organization develops for 3 to 5 years. So you had a 5-year program. What did you learn from the first strategic plan? And what are you incorporating in your action plan now to make it realistic for the citizens of Nevada?
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Do we have any from up north?
Madam President, this is Margaret Batts, District 4. May I ask the speaker a question, please?
Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your information and knowledge. But I feel what you're really saying is there is a shortage of housing in Nevada for seniors, veterans, and for the homeless. 2 of my friends are seniors, and they ran into a situation at Ovation, which is a income property. He was renting. One of them was renting a home, and they were told by the owner that she had to be out of the house in 2 weeks. So she went to Ovation, and she didn't qualify for any of those properties. But her income is not that high, so she was almost homeless. So there is a severe shortage of housing in Nevada for seniors, for veterans, and for the homeless population. I need to know, what are they going to do about that for these seniors, the homeless, and the veterans? There's a lack of affordable housing.
Michelle Fuller-Hellower for the record. I was sorry, I was having a hard time hearing everything you said, but I think I was hearing that you were saying that there's a severe shortage of affordable housing in Nevada, especially for our seniors. And if that's what you were portraying,
right.
I absolutely agree. And I think you were also asking what we were going to do about that. And
right. May I emphasize one thing? It's for seniors, the homeless population, and veterans. I know a lot of veterans have contacted me recently about this problem. So I need to know what is going to be done about it.
Michelle Fuller-Hellower for the record. I think that the next 3 presentations you'll hear more about what we are attempting as continuums of care to do about the homeless issues across the state, but recognizing that this is not just what are we going to do about it? It is what are we, the broader we, collectively as all citizens of the state of Nevada, what are we going to do to address the issue? Because it is a community issue. And we collectively all need to wrap our arms around the issue to address the issue of our neighbors who are experiencing a housing crisis. And how are we going to prevent homelessness whenever possible? And if we can't, how are we going to get folks back off the streets and into stable housing as quickly as possible?
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. I do have one question. I'm shocked to see these graphs. In my district, the woman who is the assemblywoman for my district, there's many homeless camps. They live in tents. They live with a tarp over them. And the assemblywoman in my district has been going to these camps to try to get some of these people into programs. And she's finding that they don't want to. I'm not saying all of them, but she's had very, very little success in trying to get some of these homeless people into some of the programs to help them get away from homelessness. I'm not sure how we address that. We do have people who want to get out of homelessness. They go to the programs, they get cleaned up, they get clothes, they get help with getting a job, and their lives improve. But the enormous amount of people who don't want help, how are we going to address that? I mean, is there anything, any way, any help? If you have any answers for that?
Michelle Fuller-Hallauer for the record. We need to meet people where they are. And what I mean by that is when we develop programs, we need to develop the programs that folks need and that they want, not what we think they need and what we think they want. So we need to ensure that when we're developing programs that we have people who are experiencing homelessness and people that have been recently just come out of homelessness help us to develop those programs. Because what we historically have done is we have pushed our thoughts and our ideas and our morals and our ideals onto other people, onto folks that are experiencing homelessness, and saying, this is what we think you need, and this is what we think you need to get off the street, rather than saying, what do you need today? What is most important for you today to help you today? Because what we think they need today might not be what they need today. They might be more worried about their safety today, or eating today, or something else than what we think. So we need to go to the experts, and that is the people who are experiencing the crisis at the moment, and our people who are experiencing homelessness, and have them help us develop the programs to help them, so that we can provide the programs that they need. Then maybe they'll accept the help for the programs, and because we'll be providing what they need, rather than us pushing on them what we think they need. And if we provide programs they need, maybe they'll accept the help we're offering.
Thank you. And is that part of the task force? Is that being developed? Because I know when my assemblywoman, she does ask those questions. How can I help you? What do you need? I want to get you a permanent shelter. I want to, help you. She's not having a lot of luck. I'm just saying the majority of the people in the camps in my district don't want help. And it's very frustrating. It just seems that there is no end to the problem.
Michelle Fuller-Hello, for the record, if I may. Folks that, I hear your frustration. Folks that have come out of a homeless experience have told us that their response has typically been, when they were in their homeless when they were in homelessness, their response was that because they didn't know what they needed at the time, or they were embarrassed, the services that they needed or wanted weren't available, and rather than being vulnerable, they said, "I don't want help." So again, I think that engaging folks, allowing a welcoming environment where folks who are experiencing homelessness can be a part of the solution, can sit at the table with us as equals to provide an opportunity to develop new programs that will help to provide the solution, right? That can provide us ways to give them services is what we should do. We have a lived experience consultants here in Southern Nevada. We have a lived experience advisory board in Northern Nevada. The state Interagency Council's strategic plan is encouraging that lived experience be incorporated in all aspects at all levels across all programs. And I really think that that is going to be integral as we move forward in developing programs and helping to move the needle, as well as developing more affordable housing and providing opportunities for folks to get off of the streets and provide the supportive housing and the supportive wraparound services that are needed, and the other things that you'll hear from my colleagues from the other COCs.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful plan, but I don't see anyone on the ICH Council or on the Technical Assistance Subcommittee who have ever been homeless. I served on a committee for the RTC, Transportation Authority. And on that committee, we had one person who rode the bus. She had a totally different perspective than I had as someone who has never been on an RTC bus. So I'm hoping that your idea about having homeless people, a homeless person, an ex-homeless person, somewhere on your committee or, your council to help give their perspective.
Michelle Fuller-Hellauer, for the record. I beg to differ, ma'am. There are several people that have experienced homelessness that are on the council and the subcommittee. It's not for me to disclose someone's previous homeless situation, ma'am.
Well, just by their titles and thank you.
Joanne Bongiorno, District 10, please.
Yes, Joanne, go ahead.
I think the frustrating part about all of this for me, because I deal with many of these people that are close to being evicted. They get close to where their finances are no longer supporting housing, the electric bills that are going up. I wish there would be a way that we could reach these people and help them prior to them having to go into homelessness. Maybe educate them somehow. I'm not sure. I wish I knew the answer because I'd be out there doing it. But when I see my friends because of the inflation, the renting is absurd. Some people's rents have gone to a point where it's just prohibitive for them to live on their income. I wish there was a way we could reach that point before we get into the homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bongiorno. Ms. Batts, you have a question?
Okay, I am so sorry. To the speaker, ma'am, may I ask you, is there a representative on the national level in your council? Not only local, but is there a national homeless advocate on your council? Hello?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. Was there?
Can you hear me now, ma'am? I'm so sorry. I just need to know, for your council, your team members, your council, do you have a national homeless advocate as well?
Michelle Fuller-Hallauer for the record. I think what you asked is there a national homeless representative on the council?
Yes, ma'am, because, homelessness is a national problem as well as a community and local problem.
No, ma'am. Michelle Fuller-Hallauer for the record. No, ma'am. The state Council on Homelessness to Housing is a state council. However, we do confer with the state or the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness for any guidance and any concerns that we may have. And we look to the United States strategic plan as a guiding document. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'd like to thank you, Ms. Fuller-Hallauer, for your presentation. And we will now move on to our next presentation, which is the Northern Nevada Continuum Care. We will hear from Deanna Searcy, Director of the Division of Washoe County Housing and Homeless Services. Director Searcy, please begin your presentation when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dana Searcy from Washoe County. Today, we're going to be taking you through an overview of what we are working on inside Washoe County and across our region related to homeless services, including our continuum of care, and also taking a look at the CARES campus, which has been our priority project for the last couple years. Washoe County, of course, in northern Nevada is just over 6,500 square miles. It includes the city of Reno and Sparks and is now at a population just over 500,000. And if you look at our housing spectrum across this area, Reno and Sparks are focusing on housing at all levels of the spectrum. And the county, which is what I'm presenting on today, is really focused on the unsheltered and homeless population, as well as that permanent supportive housing, which is initial housing under 30% AMI with supportive services. Our division has several priorities that we have been working on. One is about having centralized shared client data. This is critical to understanding what's happening across the region and supporting different partners through our work. Having unified regional outreach to ensure that we're reaching all of Washoe County and everyone is being offered services. Working to house clients faster. This is through coordination of care, through what we call case conferencing, but is really bringing all the players to the table and aligning the available resources with those who need support. Sheltering the unsheltered is about having enough capacity, and this is really where we're going to share the work of the CARES campus in our region to make sure that all individuals who need shelter have access to a bed. Accessible care for all is about appropriate staffing ratios, ensuring that case managers can and are available to see people when they're ready. And the end of this presentation will walk you through what we're looking at on affordable housing. And this is making sure we have a regional approach to all of those efforts to ensure we're being as efficient as possible. A look at our budget over this year. The county's budget for homeless services is just over $35 million. This includes the Nevada CARES campus, the Our Place shelter, which is women and family shelter, the Northern Nevada Continuum of Care, our Built for Zero work in Washoe County, our CHAB advisory board, which is made up of representatives from Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, and the Sheriff's Office Hope Outreach team. We also have incentives related to emergency rental assistance. We have administered much of that funding that came through with the pandemic. Most of the rental assistance through the region now is through the city of Reno. We have a tenancy support program. This is really about trying to build those relationships with landlords and figuring out how we can support people once they're housed so we can continue to see their success. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund will walk you through a couple updates on where we are there, and we are looking at some code improvements to allow affordable housing to be easier to build in the region. So what is the COC? Really, at its most basic elements, it is people coming together to solve homelessness in our community. And that's through policy, through data, and through making sure that we're prioritizing resources in a unified way. The definition here from the National Alliance to End Homelessness is a continuum of care is a regional or local planning body that coordinates housing and services funding for homeless families and individuals. And this is mandated by HUD, and there are really 6 core pieces of a continuum of care that we do each year. One is having a consolidated application each year, and that is for the funding that is received in the area, and then monitoring of those grantees of that funding. We manage coordinated entry, which is where everybody who comes into the homeless system across our region is provided a standardized assessment, and we're housing people off of that list in priority need. We conduct an annual point in time count across the nation. This is done in the last 10 days of January. And we maintain what you had previously heard Michelle mention, that homeless management information system. This is critical to us keeping all of our data centralized in one location and being able to share across providers. And we report to HUD on all of this work that is being done. If you take a look at who is on our list, we mentioned this priority list of individuals who are looking for housing. And this is truly housing that is funded with HUD and also other permanent supportive housing options that we have in the area. We're looking at more than 40% are age 55 and above, and 60% have self-identified as having a disability. And this is a look at that CARES campus that we talked about. There's several slides here, move pretty quickly, but we did want to share what is happening. The campus includes not just a shelter, a bed and a meal, which is what you'll traditionally find at shelter, but there has been a lot of investment on this site, which includes case management, behavioral health, security, and medical services. Behavioral health and medical is really focused on triaging what's happening, dealing with emergencies and crisis situations, and really stabilizing the situation on site while we work to connect with resources out in the community. This was not something we intended to have at the campus, but because of the sheer need of the population and what we were seeing, the county approved us investing in some staff, and we have seen some really positive results that we'll share as we move through this. We offer employment support. There's definitely a focus on permanent housing outcomes. We call them positive outcomes. We appreciate that some people transition into treatment facilities or other temporary programs, but the campus itself is mostly focused on ensuring that when we find that housing placement, it is a permanent placement, which is sustainable and not something that someone's going to be looking for a new place to be in 3 to 6 months. And the campus focuses on reduction of barriers. These barriers can range from background checks to IDs to having a pet. There's a lot of addressing anything that could keep you from accessing services. We're working to remove that at the campus. So as I mentioned, these barriers, there are pets allowed on site. There are no sobriety requirements. There's no fees or income requirements of any kind. There's no prior completion of other programs, background or criminal checks, or IDs. The campus is very much under construction. It has been open, the main sprung shelter. We'll walk through capacity and all of that. That has been open since May of 2021, and we are just about ready to finish all of the main construction for the shelter services areas this summer. And the last remaining piece is all of the housing that is it is under construction right now, and the first piece will open up in the spring of next year. I'm going to walk you through each of these pieces. So the Safe Camp is 50 individual units with heating and cooling. This started off as tents. We've brought in a unit called a Mod Pod. They're about 8 by 8 feet. And this program is dedicated to individuals who are unsheltered and are uncomfortable moving into a congregate shelter. Phase 1 is the piece that opened in May of 2021. This included the land purchase, the sprung construction, and temporary bathrooms and showers. All of this was done in about 3 months in the middle of COVID, led by the city of Reno, and then was transitioned over to the county for the remainder of this build out. Phase 2, we are now complete, which includes a lot of improvements. We'll walk you through those. And then phase 3 and 4 is what we are working on right now. We have a resource and winter emergency overflow. So we have a permanent overflow option on site. The Welcome Center is the largest building on the site that is opening this summer. And we're very excited about that because it will include all of the training and office space for all the services provided by staff. And then phase 4 is that supportive housing. There is also accessible space as a developer coming on site. Both phase 4 and this Line Drive housing project were funded through the Home Means Nevada initiative that Steve Acroft mentioned in his presentation earlier, and we are very grateful for that funding. This is an enormous amount of units coming to the site. So this is what the permanent Safe Camp looks like. This piece is what I was saying is dedicated to unsheltered who are uncomfortable. I think this is a good example of a program that what is led by staff who have previous experience with homelessness and have used that to help create and share what something different might look like. And there's a lot of open space, a lot of privacy, and it's just a totally different program that we're seeing a lot of success in. So this is a pilot program for the county. And now that this permanent site is open, which is just recent, we're looking forward to sharing some outcomes and seeing if there's some lessons learned here that we can share. Phase 2, the improvements inside the Sprung. So the Sprung building itself is 46,000 square feet. There are 6 different dorms. That was one of the improvements, was to separate spaces into small sections. Each of those dorms has about just shy of 100 beds in there. There's a secure room for property. And the beds are divided into 2 different sections. One is the traditional bunk bed style, which is where people start off. And as they engage with our case managers, then they're moving into what we call cubbies, which is this top picture here. But it's essentially, again, an 8x8 space. It is has some more privacy, some more space for your belongings to stay with you. Pets stay throughout this building anywhere that an owner is. A pet can be. Also, through these improvements were permanent shower restrooms and laundry. The temporary buildings were brought in again due to COVID and the need to move quickly. But then these permanent facilities were built out as part of phase 2, increasing access to these critical services. The Resource Center is part of phase 3, which is what we are currently in. This opened at the beginning of December. The bunk bed picture that you're seeing here is the emergency overflow. So this is 84 additional beds that we have on site ready to go anytime we need it, depending on weather or emergency happening in the area. And the Resource Center is focused on a couple of things. One, it's a day drop-in center. Anybody can come, and there are lots of different services there related to computers, access to charging areas. There's meals here on site, but then you can also connect with service providers from across the region. The food bank is here signing people up for SNAPs, that type of thing on site. And the other purpose of this, and a member mentioned it a little bit earlier in the previous presentation, we are going to play with the idea of how do we reach people who are about to become homeless, who maybe are close to that eviction notice or are starting to see that they're not keeping up with bills and they don't know where to go. This is a place where they can come and get connected to resources before they enter homelessness so that we can try to stop that from happening. The Welcome Center, again, this is the largest building. This photo is current. It's currently under construction, and we hope to see this open in the summertime. This is where all those services are going to live. Our intake and diversion services, security, all of the case management and behavioral health. Again, more client computers and phones, and a dining space will be here. The second floor of this building is office space for staff and a break space. This is really critical, difficult work that is being done, and right now it's all being done out of trailers. So we're looking forward to giving that to staff. And then phase 4, everything previous to this is almost essential for the campus. It's all about the shelter and the services, working to get people into housing. But phase 4 at the campus is about actually building new units. Again, this is funded with Home Means Nevada funding. The county will cover the cost of the staff and the operations ongoing for this building. We are building 50 units of permanent supportive housing, which is oh so critical to this group of people that we serve. So again, it's 50 units. There's a common space, more computers and access to phones. There is a training room, laundry on site, case management dedicated specifically to this building, and 24-hour staff. All the units are accessible so that we can serve a very high needs population. And this is a look at who is at the campus. So from July 2022 to July 23, over that year, we saw almost 2,800 unique clients served out of this campus, over 200,000 bed nights. That's every head and every bed. It is a lot of people coming and going. And when we look closer, we can see, that more than 40% of this group is age 55 and above. And we also have a very high percentage, 55% with a disability, and a full third non-insured. And our staff work every day to work through each of these different situations. As Michelle mentioned, these are big numbers that everybody's looking at, but each number represents a person, and that person has a very unique, complex set of needs. And that's our job, is to connect one-on-one with the person in that moment. How can we help? One outcome at the regional level that we are focusing on at the campus, which was part of the request of the campus, was that if we could centralize a lot of the work being done, would that be more efficient across the region? And so our law enforcement response and our emergency medical response, we know that those are very expensive services, and they are needed to be reserved for those emergencies. And so we have seen over these years that response go down due to having the correct amount of staff and the correct type of staff on site. I mentioned bringing in behavioral health and medical services. Those types of investments we're seeing pay off because we're reducing the cost of ambulances going back and forth to the hospital and overnight jail stays and that kind of thing. Another important outcome that we are watching is how many different partners and nonprofits across the region support the CARES campus. So at campus, we have over 30 partners on site right with us providing different services. And this comes together when we're looking at, well, how do you serve veterans, or how do you serve seniors, or how do you serve someone who has this very specific need? We're all collaborating and coordinating care on site with those partners so that we can carve people off and get them to the most appropriate resource, because as we all know, no one can provide everything. And so by having an awareness of all the partners available and how can we connect them quickly to those partners, we are able to keep things moving as fast as possible for those clients. This is our housing placements. We are tracking this. Again, this is permanent housing placements. We appreciate there's a lot of permanent exits, positive exits to those treatment programs and other types of things. But these are people moving out of CARES into a permanent housing option. And we have continued to see these numbers raise. We're over 800 people have been housed. We're averaging about 30 now per month, 35. And the goal for this campus is to get to about 50 placements a month out of the campus and into a permanent option that, again, is sustainable. And as we continue to mention, these are big numbers, but for each individual story, we do all we can to track them and share with them, because it is someone's life. It is someone's unique, complex situation, and there's a lot of celebrating that goes on with these numbers. And then overall at the county, how does this look? When we track numbers at the COC level, kind of zooming back out to the region, we're watching our unsheltered count in our point-in-time count decrease. We've seen some pretty significant reductions in that over the last couple years. A lot of that is directly related to adding those shelter beds. But we're also seeing an overall decrease in our numbers of individuals experiencing homelessness. We've just started to see that dip. I know this graph is only about a year, but you can see last year we peaked at about 2,400. And now we're down to about 19. We started to see that raise a little bit with winter coming in, but we're really excited about these numbers and we hope to see them continue to decrease as these efforts come into flourishing. And a lot of this housing, you know, I know the questions about what is available right now. I think we're in this period of noticing or taking action with available funding to start to build a lot of units. And now we're all in this waiting period, waiting for them all to open and being excited about that transition. So tenancy support, we have a program there, 77 people are served. This is a pretty new program for the county of these individuals. So this is when we get you housed, we're gonna keep a case manager assigned to you, not at the full permanent supportive housing level, but just a little light touch, you know, relationship with the landlord, ensure that the benefit paperwork continues to get filled out, make sure that the lights, you know, the utility bill got paid and you don't have a broken light bulb, that type of thing. We're seeing enormous success. Right now, 92% of people in that program are still housed since the program started, and some of them have been in there well over a year. But 60%, almost 60% are age 55 and above. Our trust fund, the Washoe County Trust Fund was funded initially with a little bit of seed money, just over 100,000 from the Silver Summit group, and as well as $2 million from the county ARPA allocation at Washoe County. We're getting ready. We've issued 2 intent to awards on 2 projects. One of them is dedicated to seniors, 60% area median income and below, and the other one will be funded for 30% area median income and below. So where do we need help? You know, a lot of this comes to funding. You guys are all aware of this. Nothing here that is new, but really about those housing units. As many housing units as we can fund, that's how many people we can help. We have a really good idea in our community about how many people do need permanent supportive housing, how many people do need that extra light touch to be able to live independently in a sustainable way. And having that data is new for us. It took a long time to get there, but now we are there. And so we're focused on how we can continue to see this housing built, to be able to continue to watch these numbers go in the right direction and watch individuals get housed. And that's it. I'm happy to turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, and take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cersei, Director, for your presentation. We are going to hold our questions at this time until we hear from both the Southern Nevada and rural Nevada. So next we will have the Southern Nevada, Ms. Brenda Barnes, Assistant Manager of Clark County Social Service. If you would like to begin your presentation, please.
Good afternoon. Brenda Barnes, Assistant Manager, Clark County Social Service and Southern Nevada Homelessness Continuum of Care Director. All right. To reiterate what Ms. Fuller-Halloward shared earlier regarding our state homeless data, this slide represents Southern Nevada's aged breakdown of our homeless population from our 2023 homeless point-in-time count. Out of 6,566 persons identified as homeless, 2,125 fall under the aging category of 55 years and over, those far right 2 sections, which is approximately 32.35%. The data from the 2023 point-in-time homeless count showed approximately 60% of our homeless population was unsheltered and living in the streets or places not meant for human habitation. We just concluded our 2024 point-in-time count and are collecting that data, hoping results will be finalized and available in June or July of this year for you. Clark County has implemented a non-congregate emergency shelter navigation center to connect homeless adults without children to housing, income, public benefits, physical, mental, and behavioral health services, including document readiness services and more to help individuals reach a goal of self-sufficiency. The navigation center is exactly what you might assume. In regards to some earlier conversation, this is where our outreach teams, our cross-jurisdictional outreach teams, are able to connect individuals who are ready and willing to access services and exit their homeless situation and provide them with a place to go. Something else that you had said, Madam Chair, about them not wanting to go. We found that that has happened at our navigation center. Someone might, in the moment, say, yes, I'm ready. We'll take them there. They'll be able to take a shower. They get food. They get meals. They are assessed. They kind of have that beginning housing problem-solving conversation with the individual in a person-centered approach. We recognize that they are their own central change agents, and they know what they need, just as Ms. Fuller-Halauer had expressed earlier. But they may leave the next day. They may not quite be ready. We may have someone come into contact with the navigation center 12 times, but each time they're engaged, each time they have a conversation, and that rapport gets built up, and eventually that, I think, is my personal opinionated answer to how we help navigate individuals out of homelessness into a place of safety and stability by not giving up on that front door approach. And I think I have received several emails from your Assemblywoman doing outreach saying, hey, I have someone, can someone report to these cross streets? And it takes our community, as Ms. Fuller-Halauer had expressed, and multiple attempts and tries. And I think that's what's really great about our navigation center as being that front door accessibility location for our outreach teams, as well as individuals on a walk-in basis. So we do allow those experiencing homelessness to walk in directly. Excuse me. From here, the goal is for someone to transition to temporary housing, such as the non-congregate shelters that include wraparound and case management services as well. You can see when we've opened our first non-congregate shelter as well as our first homeless navigation center. The navigation center is intended to ideally accommodate stays of up to 30 days, during and after which staff work to transition individuals to other resources. Navigation centers are designed to be as low barrier as possible while maintaining service structure and safety for both staff and the residents. If substance abuse treatment is needed, the navigation center is partnered with substance abuse and detox providers who will pick up and return those requiring such services if they're actively high and in need of someone with the appropriate qualifications to address those concerns. With both our navigation center and non-congregate shelter options, we use housing problem-solving approach. It's a recognized best practice delivery, service delivery. Through housing problem-solving, we can address barriers upon immediate contact and provide a variety of services at one location versus referring individuals elsewhere to address specific needs or receive assistance similar to the CARES campus. So some of our numbers of who we've served at our 5 non-congregate emergency shelter facilities are displayed here, which shelter our adults without children and seniors. We have collectively served over 2,000 unduplicated individuals across those non-congregate shelter locations in the Navigation Center. The Navigation Center, as you previously saw, just opened mid-July of last year. So we haven't quite hit a year, and we've been able to serve over 500 individuals. Our Roadway Inn and Americana locations primarily consist of those 55 and over. Just sort of by default, that has tended to be our senior non-congregate shelters by coincidence. The Super 8 and La Quinta Valley View offer the same services. They do tend to have more of a mixed age population, but still serve seniors in our community. Although it's become the case, no location is specific to one population other than the Americana, where those in need of higher levels of medical care and assistance are cared for. It is an assisted living location. Speaking of these, I can say that Clark County Social Service is also in the process in expanding our non-congregate shelter and navigation centers through our local processes and guiding policies. Some of our specific navigation center outcomes, the first three are the ones I'd like to highlight. We've been able to support individuals within 30 days through an individualized person-centered approach, as mentioned before. We've had 194 exit on their own to alternative resources or options. Again, it's a person-centered approach. They have a choice. And so depending on where they want to exit to, specifically, we've deemed them as self-discharging. 172 have moved on within our continuum to a non-congregate emergency shelter where they can stay safely while working towards self-sufficiency or pending referrals to alternative programs and sports. Those were the other 5 non-congregate shelter locations on the previous slide. That way, even though the navigation center is a short-term front door assessment process, they can stay at the non-congregate shelters as long as needed while they're working towards self-sufficiency. So we won't limit them to a 90-day stay to figure things out and get on their feet. And 79 were have directly accessed or exited into long-term housing stability. I think that's extremely significant. You're taking those that are experiencing and have experienced chronic homelessness, and within 30 days, they were able to access payee situations or family members, VASH vouchers for our veterans, and other long-term programs that they were able to just go right into. And that's pretty significant versus moving them on into the non-congregate shelter transitional housing situation. I also wanted to include that in the spring of 2022, the Welcome Home Program and Clark County's Community Housing Fund were created to address the urgent need for housing for low-income residents in Southern Nevada, including families, seniors, and those who are employed but unable to find affordable housing. In September of that year, the Board of County Commissioners approved CHF funding of nearly $120 million for 30 housing developments across our community, both new construction and rehab, to ensure that Clark County residents have safe, modern, and most importantly, affordable housing options to call home. Currently, there are 8 CHF projects planned for seniors, 2 of which are under construction. These are located throughout Clark County. Most of the housing is intended for seniors to serve at 50 to 60% AMI, with 2 of those properties planned for seniors with lower income of 30 to 50% AMI. And I think that answers some previous questions in regards to affordable housing within Clark County. To share more of what we're doing around long-term care for seniors, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Donalda.
Thank you. My name is Donalda Binstock. I am the social work supervisor with Clark County Social Service in our Adult Care Services Unit. Our Adult Care Services Unit does provide several specific programs, and we realize that housing issues can occur when there's a lack of in-home supports or when an individual requires hospitalization and is unable to return. So with our situation, what we did is we took a look at, there are some residents that are not eligible for the traditional services that would afford them those housing options, such as an individual that does go into a hospital, they have a medical emergency that takes place, and they're not eligible for a skilled nursing facility or an adult group care setting because they don't have insurance. They might be an undocumented individual. So they're not eligible for those traditional options for that next situation of housing. Also, the Homemaker Services Program, we want to look at enhancing those services to those individuals to remain in their homes so they don't become unhoused or have those problems or those situations arise. However, we don't have the facilities that we're currently contracted with to provide those in-home services to those individuals. There's not the capacity for them to provide the services to all those individuals that currently have that need. So those are the barriers and the problems that we took a look at initially, so that we need to address. So what we did is we took a look at expanding the actual services and the population that we can provide those services to. So that would take a look at those undocumented individuals that were previously having unprovided needs, that they're not eligible for those Medicaid services, don't have income or families that can support those needs in the community. So through Clark County Social Service, we're saying we will take a look at each of those individuals individually at what their needs are and what they can do so that we can then provide them the appropriate level of care. In order to do that, because they don't have those supports from outside insurances or from the Medicaid system, we then have increased our rate that we provide to those providers to make them be able to be willing to accept those individuals. So we have both a behaviorally complex and a medically complex rate that we are now paying, which is actually at the Medicaid rate plus 50%, because that's then an all-inclusive rate. So we have facilities who are more willing to look at those individuals. So that has been something that we're able to increase for those housing options for those individuals that don't have those options other than previously living in a hospital. In addition to that, we have increased our rates to those in-home community providers as well, those homemaker agencies. We are now paying also at that Medicaid rate plus 50%, so that's more enticing to those agencies to want to contract with us and provide services to our individuals. In addition to, we're now providing a $13 stipend per home that they do provide that care to. We did have agencies outright just tell us that Clark County was at the bottom of their list of clients that they would provide care to. They would provide to private pay people first, the VA after that, Medicaid people after that, and literally Clark County at the bottom. So that was really concerning to us that our individuals were literally being bumped. They were scheduled. They were going to receive those services, and then the provider would call and cancel and say, sorry, I was told by my agency I need to go see Mrs. Jones today because she's a private pay person, and so they were not receiving those services. This has really enhanced our ability to provide those services to those individuals, to keep them housed, keep them safe, and not experience those homeless situations. So looking at this, these are some of those long-term care outcomes that we have been able to do. Is we were able to take a look at some of those individuals that, again, were not previously being served, that we can provide those services to in the community, keep them safe. It may not be the traditional housing that we're talking about with some of the other programs. It's then looking at those alternatives. So it might be those long-term care placements. It might be group care settings. It might be keeping them in their own homes. But we were able to do that to look at those individuals that were not previously being served at all. We are also expanding our services to those individuals that are currently awaiting that Medicaid coverage. So individuals that are currently looking at receiving services from the Medicaid waiver from the state for in-home services. Right now, there's anywhere from probably a 9 to 18 month wait list to get those services in their home. So if we currently have an individual that is eligible for services through Medicaid, previously we would say, I'm sorry, that's a prior resource. You need to wait for those services through the state. That could take 1.5 years to get those services. What does that person do? Sometimes they have a fall, they end up in the hospital, they end up in a facility. We want to avoid all of that. So we're going to bridge that gap and said that we will look at our policy, change those things to be able to have us be that payer source, provide those services as they're waiting for that approval from the state, and then transition them when that becomes available. So they're not without that care in that meantime. Same thing for those individuals who are looking at that need for placement in a long-term care facility. We currently serve people in group care that are under age 65. So if I have an individual call me from the community and said that my father is 72 and needs placement in a group care setting, I really need some help, my response has been, I'm sorry, you need to contact the state, go through their waiver process. Again, that can take anywhere from 9 to 18 months for you to go and have that response from them. I hope you do well. That's not a good response. Those individuals, again, oftentimes end up in the hospital or in an unnecessary placement. So we want to be that bridge and help them in that meantime as they are then pending that service through the Medicaid waiver. So that's currently new being implemented, but that is a way for us to prevent some of those unnecessary placements in the safest situation possible. The way we do that is with some really strong community collaborations. So we are collaborating with community partners such as Hospital to Home. This is a program through Nevada Senior Services. We are able to work with them to say maybe this person doesn't specifically fit our programs, but they can go out, assess that individual, see if they fit our programs or other services that might be in the community. Again, previously people would call our agency and say, hey, I have this situation, can you go check on mom? Or what do you have available here? And we would say that's not our program. We are very programmatic specific. We are not a community social service department for those services. So partnering with this community agency really makes a huge difference as far as who we can impact and who we can offer those services to more quickly. We also partner very closely with the Clark County Public Guardian. Between the Hospital to Home program, Clark County Public Guardian, and through my unit, we meet on a biweekly basis. along with the UMC hospital staff to discuss individuals that are currently at the hospital and how we can look at moving them through that system a little bit more quickly. Primarily, those are individuals that are undocumented. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but primarily they are individuals that have very complex medical problems, so there's not a facility willing to accept them, or maybe it's an individual that just doesn't have that payment source. And so again, facilities are saying without a payment source, we're not going to accept you. Emergency Medicaid does not provide payment for ongoing care in a long-term care facility. So as we talk about those special needs, we are able to then identify facilities that will accept them, especially with our enhancement of that rate. Currently, because we don't contract with all skilled nursing facilities, we do currently have an RFQ process in place, a request for qualifications for all skilled nursing facilities. If they're interested in contracting with us to become a provider, they have that opportunity currently, so we can be able to have a larger option base for those individuals that aren't getting placement. And also our group care facilities, we need to continue to grow that resource base as well, so we're looking for additional applicants in that arena as well. Lastly, we've added a position to our unit that is called community engagement. This is a social work specialist that does take every incoming phone call to our unit. So if there is a person that calls the main number at Clark County Social Service and says, I just have a need or a question regarding this, and it might be a general resource question, it might be specific to our program, but it is specifically related to adults and specifically seniors. This specialist, this expert in the field, answers each and every single phone call. We have done this for our entire history, but we have not tracked that, unfortunately. So tracking beginning as of February, we received 49 phone calls and 14 emails. Those phone calls and emails that's listed here, but there were 56 requests for in-home services, so what we currently do, those supportive services to keep them in their home. 22 questions regarding overall Medicaid services. How do I apply for Medicaid? What counts in Medicaid? How do I access those benefits? 14 questions regarding long-term care placement, out-of-home placement, needing assistance in group care placement or skilled nursing facilities, or what are those options? 12 questions regarding affordable housing options, and that's exactly what we're talking about here today, just somebody to help navigate what's available, how do I do that, what's that process, and then 28 of just general food, VA benefits, legal services, all those types of things. So 49 phone calls, 14 emails, but 132 needs were addressed in February. That was February. March, we saw that double. We had 106 phone calls and 25 emails. Big question is, why is that doubling? I think just the word is getting out. We have a person that can address those needs, and so we're going to continue to see that grow, which I think is fantastic. People need that assistance with that navigation. It's a very fragmented system in Nevada. Unfortunately, they don't have that connection point, so we're helping to do that. So again, 92 requests for in-home services, 30 questions regarding affordable housing options. That number doubled from the previous month. 25 questions regarding long-term care placement, 18 questions regarding Medicaid, and 51 regarding general resources. But we went from 132 needs addressed in March to 216 needs being addressed, 132 in February to 216 being addressed in March. I think we're seeing some phenomenal success in just, if nothing else, helping these people feel like they're being heard and giving them the hand to, this is the next resource that's out there that should be able to assist. We always tell each and every phone call and each and every email, if this does not give you the proper resource, please call us back. We may not be the resource that can help you, but we will certainly help you find that next resource to make sure it's a warm handoff. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you tell me your name again?
Yes, Denelda Binstock, and I'm the social work supervisor with the Adult Care Services Unit at Clark County. Binstock, B-I-N-S-T-O-C-K.
Thank you so much. Again, we're going to hold our questions until after we have the rural Nevada presentation. Ms. Fuller, Hollerback, you're going to give that presentation for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Please begin.
Thank you. Michelle Fuller-Hallauer, owner, CEO of Winged Wolf Innovations, and we have the contract for COC coordination for the rural Nevada continuum of care. The rural Nevada continuum of care consists of the 14 counties, as you see listed here, and the city of Carson City. The rural Nevada continuum of care covers 90,000 square miles of the state of Nevada. Essentially, it's all of Nevada other than the county of Clark and the county of Washoe. Except for Carson City, Douglas, Lyon, and Story, the other 11 counties that are in the rural Nevada continuum of care are frontier counties. So, as you can imagine, the residents of those frontier counties face a lot of logistical hurdles when they are trying to access health, supportive, and other services that are significant distances away from each other. So they have barriers that can be exacerbated especially if somebody's experiencing homelessness. Trying to get to those services because of mobility issues. So I would just want you to keep that in mind when we're talking about the rurals. This slide really is here to tell you, for you to see, it really breaks down every county, but as you can see what is circled in red, this is our urban and frontier counties. For folks that are age 65 and older, in 2023, we have almost 67,000 seniors in the urban and rural areas, and the projection is that by 2033, we will have about just over 76.5 thousand seniors. So that's a lot of seniors in our frontier and rural communities. As people who live in our rural and frontier communities age, they're in need of safe and affordable housing. They're in need of safe and affordable, stable housing, access to health care, access to mental health care, food stability, transportation as they move from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, and socialization. I believe that we can all agree that those are the things that we want for our loved ones, right? Housing affordability is very important. We've been talking about that all morning and into the afternoon. Nearly 90% of older adults would like to remain in their homes for as long as possible. However, as we know, physical changes brought on by aging, vision, and hearing changes, cognitive decline, mobility limitations, and self-care, and other difficulties impact folks' ability to remain in their home. So it's important that we really focus in on housing affordability, especially as people age, and put things in place to enable people to afford their homes, especially as homes become more scarce and affordability becomes more scarce. Some of the data on this slide you heard me talk about in my previous presentation, that 31% of our extremely low income folks in our community, in our state, are seniors. We have 14% or 14 units per 100 low income renters within the state, and that we have over 91,000 extremely low income renters. This slide here is really for you to get a sense of, I want to give you a sense of what we're talking about for seniors who are 65 and older who are eligible for Medicare. This map really, I want you to hone in on the rural and frontier areas. This map is out of the Rural and Frontier Health and Data book that was just released for the 2023 11th edition. This shows enrollment by county, and the lighter the color, the greater the enrollment percent, or the lower the enrollment percentage. So the lighter the numbers, or the lighter the color, the lower the enrollment. So I want the rural frontier communities have a lower Medicare enrollment, even though we have a large population of seniors. To break that down for numbers, Medicare enrollment in Nevada from 2013 to 2022. Again, you can see that we've highlighted circled in red, those numbers. And the change over time, we had just over 56,000 in 2013, 73.6% in 2022 for our urban and rural areas. For Medicare Advantage Part C, so that is the routine health care that you use every day. For 2013, we had almost 10,000 for the rural urban areas, and in 2022, we had 22.3 thousand. For the prescription drug Part D, same area, we had 32.2 thousand in 2013 and 50.2 thousand in 2022. For primary medical care professional shortage areas, it's no surprise to any of you. You all know, we've talked about this for many years, that we have a shortage of medical professionals across the state. This map is also from the Rural and Frontier Health Data Book. It shows the medical care professional shortages across the state. And as you can see, outside of the Nellis Air Force Base area, much of the rural and frontier areas fall within a 13 or greater shortage area. What that essentially means is there's an extreme shortage of medical professionals, not only across the state, but especially in our frontier and rural areas. And for the same goes for our mental health professional shortage. Again, this is from the Rural and Frontier Data Book, but it's disheartening to see the mental health professional shortage across our whole state. And I think this is really, really important as we go into our next legislative session for all populations, but especially our folks as they age. This just is a breakdown of the health workforce supply and per the actual health profession. And you can see for the rural and frontier counties versus the urban counties that this really shows the huge disparity and the lack of professionals that we have. So not only do folks in the rural and rural and frontier areas have to travel a long way to get medical and mental health assistance, but there's a huge shortage of folks to get the care from. And then access to food. This map shows where the food deserts are across the state. So the green shows you where our food deserts are in our area. So Nevada has a more likely to 89% of our folks that have food deserts are in the urban areas, but there's 11%, which is large when you're talking about 90,000 square miles. 11% is a big area, which is in a rural and urban area for food desert. And then if we talk about public transportation in the rural areas, our rural and frontier areas, one community has their own transportation. That's one county, and we have 7 of our counties have no bus transportation, no public bus transportation at all. And then we have 3 that utilize the Southern Nevada Transit Coalition, and they have their own public transportation or transportation with their senior center. And then we have 4 counties that only use the Southern Nevada Transportation Coalition. So there's a big disparity across the rural and frontier areas on how folks can get access to places to go and socialization, which is really, really important, especially as people age. So let's talk a minute about socialization, because socialization is really important for overall health and well-being for all of us, but especially as we grow older. Staying socially active has a significant impact on an older adult's mental health, and it helps to combat depression, anxiety, feelings of isolation. It helps us to keep our mind sharp, to reduce our risk of cognitive decline and dementia. It helps us, really to stay engaged. It improves, our overall, quality of life. So I think that, we need to keep all of these things in mind as we are thinking about the needs of our seniors, and especially the needs of our seniors in our rural and frontier areas. And in our rural and frontier areas, we don't have a lot of services that are specific for our seniors, especially our seniors that are experiencing homelessness. In 2023, our unsheltered point-in-time count, we had 314 people that were in our senior population that were unsheltered, meaning they're sleeping outside. They're sleeping in the desert. They're sleeping on the streets. In that same time period, we had 96 that were in emergency shelter or transitional housing. Now, you can see on this map that the difference between whether they're in a shelter bed or a transitional housing bed, and you can see where they're located. These are the only shelters or transitional housing we have in rural or frontier areas. They're all identified on this map. We don't have that many shelters or transitional programs across the rural or frontier areas. Seniors that experience over homelessness in the rural continuum versus our overall. You saw this data in our previous presentation, but just to give you another look at it, 132 are aged 55 and older. The blue indicates those that are 55 to 64, and the orange indicates those that are 65 and older. You can also see the breakdown on the night of the point-in-time count, and those that were in emergency shelter versus those that were literally sleeping outside. So, and then this is just a breakdown of this is just a pullback of the same data. And then this is just another visual for you to take a look at this data versus the overall point-in-time count data. So it just kind of gives you that kind of visual difference between the overall. The line indicates our overall numbers, and the bar, actually, the bar graph indicates those that are seniors experiencing homelessness. So what do we do? Let's talk about some solutions. So what do we need to do to address homelessness, and specifically address homelessness among seniors, and not just our rural homelessness, but across the whole state, across all three of our continuums of care? We need housing. We need to preserve folks in their housing whenever possible. As I said before, 90% of our seniors want to stay in their homes as they age. And respecting their aging in place preference is an important way to support them. And Donaldo spoke to that as well. So aging in place promotes life satisfaction and a positive quality of life and self-esteem. And all of that is necessary to remain healthy and happy. So if we can prevent homelessness whenever possible and help folks to age in age in place, then that is the best way for us to do that. If we can do that through home repairs and rehabilitation, helping to make modifications in a home by doing, expanding, making doorways wider, doing grab bars, helping to modify stairways, fixing kitchens so that they're wheelchair accessible or the cabinets are more accessible, making laundry systems a bit easier, fixing the bathrooms so showers and toilets are better accessible, installing ramps, doing curbless showers, non-slip flooring, lowering cabinets, side-by-side washer and dryer units. Anything that we can do to help people stay in their home would be ideal. We can help weatherize homes. We can help pay utilities. Anything that we could do in those things. Shallow subsidies, shallow rental subsidies is another way that we can help folks to stay in their home. These subsidies, compared to traditional deep subsidies, can be provided with housing choice vouchers or other types of assistance that can help people that are very low income to supplement an income that they have, but not be a full subsidy. So that might be something that could be explored with various types of funding options, whether it be state funding or other types of federal funding. Tenant-based protections for our seniors is another important thing that we should consider. Permanent supportive housing, or PSH, or housing with supports. Housing choice vouchers. Section 202 and 811. I know that we've underutilized our 811 vouchers. It's for 18 to 62 when you go in. That's for eligibility, but and you have to have a disability. But once you have that voucher, you can maintain that voucher, right? So if you have a disability and you're under 62, you go in, you can age with that voucher. The state of Nevada underutilizes their 811 vouchers. A PACE program, which is programs of all-inclusive care for the elderly, is a program. I'm not sure that we have those in Nevada, but it might be something for us to consider. Some communities have combined the individualized care planning and residential supports through Medicare and Medicaid PACE programs with affordable housing financing tools to create an enriched service model promoting aging in place. Expanding the use of Medicaid funds. Some states use Medicaid for supportive housing activities and tenancy supports. I know we've been exploring that in our community and really moving toward, in lieu of services, for some tenancy supports. I think that's something that we should continue to work toward and find ways that we can do more with Medicaid funds. Establishing multi-year rent stabilization fund to provide a mix of shallow and deep subsidies to help our older adults and people with disabilities to afford fair market rate rents, and to transitional permanent housing assistance programs, including housing choice voucher programs. And maybe developing a fee or a tax for our big venues, such as our sporting events, to be given to a homeless services program or a homeless service fund. The city of Miami-Dade County has a food and beverage tax that goes into for homeless services. And we need to make sure that all of our seniors are filing for and getting their Social Security benefits. With that ends my report. And I just want to say, in a nutshell, I would like to thank you, and I want you to remember that as we move into discussion, as you move into your discussions about affordable housing needs for our aging population, I would like you to remember that we're talking about real people. We're talking to people just like the person that you wrote down on your paper at the beginning of our interagency council conversation. And I believe that housing is a human right, and that our elders especially deserve the respect and the honor of being housed in a safe, comfortable place to live so that they can live for the remainder of their lives respectfully in a safe, comfortable place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations. We can now ask questions. Ms. Director Searcy of the Northern Nevada CARE had to leave, so 4 members, you will not be able to ask questions about the Northern Nevada, which was Washoe, basically. So if you have questions about the Southern Nevada, you may direct your questions to Ms. Barnes or Ms. Binstock, or for rural Nevada, you may direct your questions to Ms. Fuller-Heller. Any questions? Yes, Dr. Marchant?
I am unused to seeing the term frontier described to any place in my lifetime beyond leaving Wyoming. Which counties have you determined are rural versus frontier? Can you just give me one example?
This is Michelle Fuller-Hellauer. Yeah, let me get my list because I don't have them memorized.
You actually have several frontier counties, is that?
Yes, we actually.
My goodness gracious.
We have 11 that are identified as frontier.
So what's the difference in the definition between rural and frontier? Is it a population definition?
It is. I don't have the definition memorized.
Okay. I'm just curious about the usage. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marchant. Any other questions? Mr. Slaughter, go ahead.
Yes, again, I'd like to state that I'm new to this board, and just listening to Ms. Fuller, Ms. Bonds, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name, senioritis, you know.
Last name is Binstock.
Binstock. I just see the passion in what you do, and understanding that what came to mind is the word joy. If you can bring joy to a senior, to a person that's homeless, you not only affect them mentally, but you affect them physically as well. And to say that a person that's homeless ages maybe 15 years beyond their age, it was a revelation to me to understand that. And I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I really learned a lot, and I'm telling you, this really hits home to me because I work with kids in the Clark County, been volunteering for 10 years, for all sorts of things. I'm just a guy off the street. I don't have any expertise in anything. But down the street, I work with kids that have addictions. On Saturdays for the last 5-6 years, I work with people with Parkinson's disease. And everything is about to bring joy, and that joy will how you say, overall health, mental and physical. I thank you for your presentation, and I'm just learning a lot. Thank you.
I want to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Any other questions?
I'll say something.
Dr. Jordan?
Marilyn Jordan, District 9. I want to say thank you for all this information. It was a lot, and it takes time to go through it. But I was really encouraged to see that not only are we dealing with problems, but we're dealing with solutions. And I thank you very much for that because you have a lot of work to do. And I am really, really concerned about our rural counties having such few services. But services here in Clark County are not the best either. We really need a lot of work done. And instead of growing our health services for seniors, we're losing. So anything that we can do to help and support you, we're here. Please get back with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Anyone else have questions? Yes, Mr. Troth?
Ladies, thank you. Excellent presentations and a ton of information. For our Clark County folks, do you have any idea what the Clark County Social Services budget is?
Brenda Barnes, for the record. We're in the middle of our budget period right now, so specific to homelessness, I cannot speak on it, but I can get that back to the committee.
Any idea what it was in 2023?
Give me a moment.
Yeah, I mean, just a ballpark. It's
I think
millions and millions, right?
it is. I think it was around 50 million. I'm going to give you a very approximate ballpark of about 50 million towards homelessness.
And that's just for the Social Services Department in Clark County.
That is not just social service, but Clark County's response.
Okay. And a follow-up, a lot of your social services stuff comes from a lot of Medicaid and Medicare money. Federal grants, federal money comes in and subsidizes a lot of what Clark County does. And I don't need a
I wouldn't say
number.
necessarily only specific programs.
Okay.
But we do receive HUD, and then we also receive like AB 396, ARPA, and other federal funding. So federal funding umbrella, yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel confident in staying Medicaid and Medicare.
No, that's fair. The amount of money that we use for this is pretty tremendous. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Good job, ladies, appreciate it.
Thank
As a-
you. Mr. Troth, any other questions?
I'm good. I'm good.
Not hearing any others. I do have one for you ladies, all of you, any of you. The solutions. I see this page, solutions. I know you are all in your respective positions always looking for solutions for these problems. And it seems that most of it depends on more funding. Other than the federal, state, county money, do you get grants? Are there any grants that you apply for and get for the social services?
Brenda Barnes, Clark County Social Service. The reference to HUD funding, we have to apply for that. So Clark County Social Service applies directly, as well as our continuum of care. So the Southern Nevada Homelessness Continuum of Care compiles a consolidated application amongst our nonprofit providers in the community, also doing that work, so that we can put a strong application to a varied amount of services to address homelessness in our area. But we also seek out alternative funding, SAMHSA grants and things of that nature as well. So yes, we strive for as much as we can.
Michelle Fuller-Hallauer for the record. Just to add to what Ms. Barnes said, and what Ms. Searcy mentioned earlier, all three continuums of care that's part of what a continuum of care does, is there is a collaborative application that the continuum of care applies for on behalf of their geographic area. And it is that application comprises of one big application, overarching application, and a lot of smaller project applications that are are agency applications for agencies within the geographic area or within the continuum. And then that big package application goes up to HUD for HUD COC funding. And so each of the three COCs applies for that money. And so you've heard from the leads from each of those. We all three of us, have ESG money, emergency solutions grant dollars, that goes into homeless services for what that's eligible for. It's federal HUD dollars that pays for emergency shelter, prevention, some prevention dollars, outreach type things, and some rapid rehousing. But it has to be done within the continuum of care, within the auspices of that, with the eligibility. And I think Mr. Acroft talked a little bit about ESG as well, because that goes through the state. The state gets the monies especially for the rural area. And then there are some other funding that comes in with some set-asides for homeless services, such as home dollars. There's some monies that comes in set aside for that. So all of our counties and our nonprofits work collaboratively with the Continuum lead agency to apply for everything that's possible for homeless services. It's still not enough.
Thank you. I know our homeless population is growing. Another thing that you told us about was food deserts. Is that because supermarkets, grocery stores, they just don't locate in your rural areas? There's not enough population, to sustain the business? Is that's what's happening?
Michelle Fuller-Hellauer, for the record. I'm not an economist, so, it's hard for me to get down to the nuances of all of that. But yeah, I mean, there are probably a variety of reasons why there are no grocery stores or reasons why there's food there. But my speculation is that there probably is not a way to sustain operations and make it viable to have grocery stores or those types of things in those particular areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that, Brenda Barnes, for the record.
Yes.
Just on a personal note, I grew up in Lincoln County, still one of our frontier counties here in Southern Nevada. And we had a very small grocery store. It wasn't one that wasn't a Vaughn's or an Albertsons or a Smith's, but we had to travel into Las Vegas over 90 miles to do all of our grocery shopping. I remember coolers, multiple coolers in the back of our Suburban that we would stock up on. And so we didn't have the same access that people do immediately and things like that. We had to garden, but that's also difficult because it was still part of the desert of Nevada. And so I just kind of want to share more of on a personal note what that feels like in those rural communities. I think we had a pizza parlor that dubbed as a video rental. We didn't even have a Safeway. Yeah, it burned down and then we lost that resource, that kind of element of something that the city folk had. So it is challenging and it's hard to keep it running financially for those people living there that are trying to do that for us.
Danelda Binstock with Clark County Social Service. If I could add on one additional thing, even in the larger urban area of Las Vegas, we have individuals who are food insufficient. So through our Homemaker program, we have contracted with an agency that is delivering home delivered meals. In addition to the Meals on Wheels, there just isn't enough food for these individuals. Through all the food sites, they might get baskets of food or boxes of food, but they don't have the ability to stand because of either osteoporosis or due to some arthritis or other medical conditions to prepare those meals on their own. So to have prepared meals delivered to them is a real difficult thing to be able to have that convenience or that accommodation even in our larger urban areas. So that continues to be an issue, and if it is an issue in Las Vegas, yes, in those frontier areas, it's desperate for those poor individuals. But we have many individuals that we are serving through our in-home services, through our Homemaker program right now, approximately 350 individual households, and there's only 53 that are receiving a meal program through our agency due to funding. So funding is always an issue, whether that be for those services, for housing, for the meals themselves. All those things are certainly a part of that, and we're in desperate need for those to continue to be enhanced at all times. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Jordan?
Marilyn Jordan, District 9. I want to say that about 2 weeks ago, I had somebody call me and say that they took the senior bus, went shopping, and they got to the supermarket and they had no eggs. They had minimal amounts of milk and other things. And when we ask our seniors to make this a journey or a voyage for the day, and you get there and you can't find any of the things that you require to sustain yourself, it's telling us a story. And we need to look at that story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bongiorno, you had a question?
I do. I was wondering, when we're talking about housing, if they ever looked into existing buildings as commercial real estate, in some places, offices that have become vacant because the employers realize that they can have their employees work from home. And some of these buildings may be vacant and may be able to be purchased for a lot less than construction, and maybe rehabbing those buildings into, well, into housing. For I know that in some cities it has started. Perhaps not here, perhaps our real estate market is different, but I see some places that are vacant, and I think, wow, we could probably go in and rehab those much easier and quicker. Thank you.
Michelle Fuller Hellauer, for the record. I love that idea. If we can find somebody that can do it for cheaper than it is to tear things down or build new. So I love that idea. So help us do that.
Thank you.
Brenda
Yes.
Barnes, that's what we've done with our non-congregate shelters. Our non-congregate shelters have converted vacant hotel motel locations as well as the navigation center. And there have been conversations with some investors in regards to our suites, the ones that have actual kitchenettes in them, as possible options as a more of a permanent supportive housing location where someone can still live independently but have places to cook and prepare their meals. So we're hopefully having some conversations in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Slaughter, you have a question?
Yes, Frank Slaughter, District 11. As you can hear my accent, I'm from Massachusetts, New England. In my hometown, when our factories closed, they repurposed factories into beautiful, beautiful apartments and also places for homeless shelters. I mean, if you ever want to take a trip back to Massachusetts, New Bedford, Mass, by the sea, you'll see those buildings and you probably can find out who does those. I don't know.
Seeing no other questions, I would like to thank you, Ms. Barnes, Ms. Binstock, and Ms. Fuller Hellauer for your presentations. They were very eye-opening, and thank you so much for all your hard work in putting them together. Members, we're going to take a 10-minute break to use the facilities, perhaps get a drink before we move on to our next presentation. So I would like everyone to return no later than 1:25. Thank you. We'll come back to order. Our next presentation is on behavioral and mental health care services for senior citizens in Nevada. And we have Dr. Ruth Condrey with the Bureau of Behavioral Health, Wellness, and Prevention of the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Dr. Condrey, please begin when you are ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to talk with you about our work on behalf of Nevada's residents. I'm Ruth Condrey, and I serve as Deputy Bureau Chief in the Bureau of Behavioral Health, Wellness, and Prevention within Division of Public and Behavioral Health. The mission of Division of Public and Behavioral Health is to protect, promote, and improve the physical and behavioral health and safety of all people in Nevada. Our purpose is to make life healthier, happier, longer, and safer for everyone. The focus of my presentation today is to provide an overview of the mental health services that are provided by our Bureau. Our Bureau is responsible for building community-based mental health services to meet the needs of Nevada's residents. Our services are designed to address mental health conditions that occur across the developmental lifespan, from early childhood to senior citizens. Our mental health model parallels the framework used for public health and preventive medicine, which emphasizes early identification and early intervention for conditions that can be life-changing, such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. In Nevada, our mental health services are supported by a variety of resources, including the Community Mental Health Services Block Grant that is funded by the U.S. Congress and administered through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. We also have available mental health block grant supplemental funding. We also have available the ability to apply for new competitive awards outside the federal block grant funding stream, and also have available to the state general fund. Our mental health services branch partners with other state agencies and community-based providers to deliver a comprehensive system of care to adults with serious mental illness, also referred to as SMI for short, children with serious emotional disturbance, referred to as SED for short, family members of individuals with SMI and SED, and individuals who are experiencing mental and behavioral health crises and their family members and partners. Now I'm going to describe our Nevada Mental Health System 2024. This will be reasonably high level, system level discussion to describe how we've developed systems and subsystems for carrying out functions and operations. So this graphic shows our current model of mental health care for Nevada's residents. It's a picture of how the overall system is put together and operates through subsystems of care and across 3 separate but connected levels. The top tier is the coordinated care for mental and behavioral health disorders, and it includes interventions delivered to Nevada's residents by the state and by our community partners. What is coordinated care? Our evidence-based coordinated care programs include shared decision-making by clients, their family members, when possible, and multidisciplinary teams of mental health professionals whose knowledge and clinical expertise span biological, psychological, and social domains. Interventions include psychopharmacology with medication management when needed, individual psychotherapy and group therapy, family psychoeducation, supported employment and education, case management, and peer support services. The coordinated care level is connected via bidirectional arrows to the 3 categories of primary mental disorders that commonly appear in community-based mental health clinics: the psychoses, the mood and anxiety disorders, and the substance use and misuse disorders. The middle tier references community life, where we live, work, play, and pray. This middle tier lies between coordinated care and the crisis response safety net at the bottom. The bottom tier, the crisis response safety net, includes 4 subsystems of interventions: crisis call lines, including the newly developed 988 line, the mobile crisis response teams, the crisis stabilization facilities, and our post-crisis wraparound. Bidirectional arrows on the left and right margins link the top tier of coordinated care services with the bottom tier of the crisis response safety net. A frequently asked question is, how do people enter the treatment services in this model, and how do they navigate among its subsystems? The answer is that it depends on the person and their circumstances. As an example, and please understand that this example is a fictional scenario and it does not refer to a real person. Isabella is 19 years old and lives in Reno with her parents. Isabella has been experiencing sadness and anxious feelings for several weeks, and during a holiday weekend, she begins to feel a sense of urgency that her feelings are not getting any better. Isabella has heard the 988 line offers help for feelings like these, and she makes the call. The mental health professional who answers her 988 call determines that support and evaluation services are needed. The mental health professional asks Isabella to add her mother to the phone conversation, and together they decide that dispatching Reno's mobile crisis response team to their home could be helpful for Isabella and her family in deciding what she needs most immediately. The mobile crisis response team arrives, and together with Isabella and her family, they decide that community-based services are a good solution for Isabella at this time. Case management services are then provided to Isabella and her family inside their home on the same day, and Isabella is connected with a community-based coordinated care program for mood and anxiety-related distress for transition-aged youth. There's an important note to make about the sequence of events that I just described. Isabella and her family are able to use services from two subsystems of the crisis response safety net tier to arrange for and access case management and disorder-specific interventions from that top coordinated care tier. So it's a movement between levels as well as a movement across levels. Other ways to access Nevada's mental health system are through Nevada 211, as well as by self-referral. The person themselves calls a program and asks for help, as well as concerned others referrals, including a wide range of community resources such as primary medical care, the crisis response agencies like I mentioned, 988, government mental health and social services agencies, law enforcement and the courts, faith-based communities, friends and family members. I also want to mention that many intervention programs use websites and social media platforms with their referral information posted. I'll mention here right now that we prepared a handout for you with a list of Nevada's community treatment programs for mental health and behavioral health needs. Next, I would like to mention and emphasize some of the conceptual underpinnings of our model, in particular several factors that emerged from the clinical research beginning in the early 1990s. Duration of untreated mental illness is one of the first factors, and that refers to the length of time between the onset of a disorder and the point when a person enters treatment. The general findings are, for this particular factor, is that the length of time that a person does not receive treatment influences clinical and social outcomes, psychological well-being, and quality of life. The second factor, age of onset, refers to the age that an individual is first diagnosed with a mental disorder, which differs across mental disorders, and is important for the third factor, the timing of initial interventions. Historically, mental health services have focused on later stages of serious mental illness, which has meant that interventions often occur only after things reach a crisis and only after prolonged periods of untreated illness. The general findings with respect to the timing of initial interventions are that individuals who receive early intervention services for serious mental illness experience better clinical and social outcomes, such as reduced risk of severe clinical symptoms and hospitalization, and increased involvement in school and/or work. Collectively, these findings, as well as other related findings, have informed the planning of our mental health treatment programs so that we are targeting stage of illness as well as type of illness. Division of Public and Behavioral Health provides community-based coordinated care services throughout Nevada. The next two slides show the locations of coordinated care programs that are based on the stage of serious mental illness treated. This map shows the locations of our early intervention programs for early stage serious mental illness, treating young people who are 14 to 30 years of age. The blue and purple circles identify our early intervention programs for early stage SMI, with 3 first episode of psychosis programs located in Las Vegas, Reno, and Carson City, which, as we know, represent the most populous areas in Nevada and include approximately 95% of the state's residents. In addition to those 3 programs, we have 2 additional early intervention programs. The early stage bipolar disorder with psychosis program, also located in Las Vegas, and a clinical high risk for psychosis program, also located in Las Vegas. The green circles that appear in the northern part of the state identify the rural communities mental health outreach program, which provides schools-based early interventions for adolescents and transition age youth, so individuals who are ages 12 to 25 years, via UNLV telebehavioral health services, and their clinic homes are in 2 locations, Humboldt County in Winnemucca and Elko County in Elko. This next slide shows a map that provides the locations of 12 assertive community treatment programs of coordinated care for later stage serious mental illness. This includes people who are 18 years and older and follows that lifespan, developmental lifespan to senior citizens. So for this particular program, the assertive community treatment programs, it treats people beginning at the age of 18 and all the way to senior citizens. The distinction here from the early intervention programs that just described in the previous slide is that this is for later stage serious mental illness. So this is for severe and persistent serious mental illness. We have 12 programs of assertive community treatment. 2 programs, the locations are that 2 programs are located in Washoe County, Reno, 4 programs in Carson City, 1 program in Yerington, Lyon County, 1 program in Fallon, Churchill County, 1 program in Elko County, and 3 programs in Clark County, Las Vegas. In summary, Nevada's mental health system provides evidence-based coordinated care for serious mental illness delivered by multidisciplinary teams of mental health professionals whose knowledge and clinical expertise span biological, psychological, and social domains. Community-based treatment programs offer coordinated care for early-stage serious mental illness for individuals 14 to 30 years of age, and later stage severe and persistent serious mental illness beginning at 18 years of age and extending through to senior citizens. Programs are located throughout the state. Our mental health system model parallels public health and preventive medicine frameworks that emphasize early identification and early intervention for medical conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. While the state continues to help senior citizens access mental health services that are needed, appropriate, and consistent with best practice, we are building a system of care that will be continuous across the developmental lifespan, from early childhood to senior citizens. Our goal is to increase the likelihood that by providing early identification and early interventions, our state residents will enjoy enhanced mental health, improved well-being, and an optimal quality of life into their later years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Condrey, for that presentation. Do I have any questions, members? Mm-hmm. Anybody up north? No. Thank you, Dr. Condrey, for a wonderful presentation. We appreciate your taking time to wait so long to present, and we thank you very much for coming.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Our next agenda item, foreign members, is to have our facilitator reports. Ms. Tyler is excused for today, and we'll hear her report next meeting. Ms. Aden, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Good evening again. I have been a little busy, but with my health condition, haven't done all the things I intended to do. I visited a couple of healthcare homes just to see how things were and see how the cleanliness was, and they were very, very good. I also went to a health fair, and that's where I got a lot of information, and it was great talking to the ladies as to what they have to offer in the community, healthcare-wise. The next one I have is April 18th at the Sparks Library from 11 to 1, and I plan to attend that one. And that's about all I have to report now for this this session. I have been going through a health problem, so I haven't done all the things that I intended to do. I have been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but I am doing well, doing my treatments, and I'm continue doing my visiting with the senior health care problems. So I just need prayers for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aden, for your report. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Aden? All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the discussion of future agenda items. I would like to open a brief discussion of possible future agenda items and presentations that may be of interest to forum members. That is, please suggest any topics you would like to suggest for discussion and consideration. Mr. Troth, it came to my attention that you may have a topic for us to consider. Would you like to start? Let us know about your topic.
Sure. I sent an email to some of the members of the council and some discussions about employment situations and opportunities for seniors. With a lot of the economic situations that's going on now, we still have a fair amount of people that still work past the traditional 65 or so. And are there opportunities to help people do that? What is the state employment office has a lot of opportunity and actions, and I just thought it might be something that we want to have a few of those kind of people come and chat about what's going on in the local, maybe in Clark and Washoe County areas, along with the state, for members that keep working past the traditional retirement ages, with some of the discussion points, because I think lots of times we want to keep working for a lot of different reasons, and are there issues with doing that? Age discrimination, all kinds of concepts about pay and those kind of things for seniors that keep working, and is there something that we might be able to address or help with that? That was my thought process on that.
Thank you, Mr. Troth. Mr. Slaughter, I believe you had something?
Yes, for, excuse me, for the last 7 years, I've been working with people with Parkinson's disease at least twice a week. I kind of slowed that down because I have other responsibilities. But what I noticed is that with this disease, we don't have a lot of African Americans, Hispanics, or people of low income coming to the facilities like I do boxing with Parkinson's. There's also dancing with Parkinson's. And I'd like to discuss, first of all, show you the benefits of movement with this neurological disease by bringing in some neurologists from the Ruval Center and also some of the people that I've been working with to tell that how just movement, getting off the couch, getting out of the house, can affect their lives. One of the reasons I did notice is because there's not a lot of disposable income in people that maybe worked in the food industry or maid service. That mainly affects minorities. And the other thing is transportation. We have 2 facilities in Las Vegas that caters to people with Parkinson's disease. One is in the north with Richard Steele, the Hall of Fame referee, and one is in Green Valley. And so if we can put together maybe on a sliding scale or even be able to get these people into these facilities so they can extend their life. And again, I like the word joy. They get community and also transportation. And I hope I can bring that to the forum in a couple of months. I'm working on it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Anyone else have any suggestions for future items for discussion? Dr. Jordan?
Thank you very much, Madam President. Marilyn Jordan, District 9. As stated earlier when we started our session, I really would like to follow up on Medicaid and Medicare fraud as an issue for our seniors. It's just very important to me. I hear stories every day. I've been to a number of centers, and I'm hearing horror stories about payments being made for people that are sick, and some people aren't even there, and they're sending out doctor's bills and what have you. And I'd also like to have an update from the Attorney General's office on what's going on with scams, which seems to be very prevalent in many of our senior centers, and quite a few people that are at home are receiving constantly telephone calls on a daily basis for different kinds of things. So people have really gotten very, very concerned, and they just don't know what to do. And there are not enough people that can share next steps for what they should do. So I'd appreciate hearing what plans the Attorney General's office has for trying to ameliorate some of these situations. Those are my 2 issues that I brought to us in the beginning, and I'd like to follow up on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Ms. Bongiorno?
Yes, I would still like to pursue something that I've been speaking about here for almost 15 years now, and we kind of touched on it. It's how to navigate our system and the things that are available to seniors and how we can disseminate that information to them. And primarily, I like to call it a telephone book or index cards, whichever. Basically, a data bank that would give seniors the information they need when they're trying to locate anything specific, whether it be transportation or health. I think a data bank of that sort, and if we could develop one and, give it out to the church and let them pay it forward and continue that way, the cost should not be surmountable. It's just where people can locate information when they need it. I don't think we have anything like that. There are so many variations and so many different departments that a senior can become confused with that. And I really would like to maybe even pursue it myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have suggestions?
It was lazy, it just came on.
Oh, thank you, everyone, for your suggestions. They will be taken under advisement. We will talk with our research staff to see what they can come up with to create some programs for us. Patrick, do you have the list of our next meetings? I thought I had it in my folder here. Yeah, the dates. And I'm sorry, Ms. Batts, you had a suggestion for us?
Yes, yes, Madam Chair. The suggestions that I made, they were all discussed today.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Okay, I know I have a bad reception and New Orleans is awful. The suggestions that I had emailed to you, 4 of them were discussed today: mental health, housing affordability, homelessness, and transportation for seniors. They were all discussed today.
Yes, we did get information on those and have presentations today. And thank you for those suggestions.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I would just like to remind everyone of our future forum meetings. They are May 22nd, June 26th, August 7th. Please mark your calendars so that you may be available. And I do want to say that the August 7 is probably going to be fairly lengthy because that's when we decide what our BDR is going to be. And sometimes they run a little bit long. We will have lunch that day. It will be provided on that day. Not a full course meal, just a lunch. So I wanted to let you know that ahead of time. The other item that I would like to discuss with you, I have asked our coordinators if business cards are a possibility. I thought that our facilitators would probably need a business card as they are going around discussing in different facilities. So if anyone would like business cards, please let me know. We will get those ordered. They will have your cell phone on them if you so choose, or what phone number you choose. The address, however, will be the Grant Sawyer Building or Julianne's office in Carson City. So if you could let us know the name, how you would like it, if you have, a full name, a nickname, and a phone number that you would like to have on them. We'll see what we can do about that. Trying to think, did we have something else? I think right now. I'm finished with my updates. And so we will move to public comment. We will start with public comment from those in the physical locations and then move to public comment from anyone who has called in. Again, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. We will time each speaker providing public comment to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name for the record. Is there anyone in Carson City who would like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing no one at the table, is there anyone in Las Vegas who would like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing no one in the room or at the table, we will move to BPS. Please add the first caller with public comment to the meeting.
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to provide comment at this time.
Thank you very much, BPS. This concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, starting at 10 a.m. Meeting is adjourned.